back. StreamYard didn't explode again today. We're here. We're here.
It's nice to be back, and we may note we've got slightly the wrong background, so let's do a small background change as we go Age of Sigmar.
Oh, yeah.
We can't go wrong with that. Got to bring out that one. Look at that. Isn't that special? Because yes, of course, today we are not doing our standard dive into Warhammer Fantasy. We're doing Warhammer Age of Sigmar instead. And we're going to be diving into something that I know precious little about. So this is going to be a super fun one. I am going to be much like many of you out there wondering, do I really want to dive into any of this Age of Sigmar lore? Today you're going to find out whether you're impressed with it or not so impressed with it. I'm looking forward to this one quite a lot. I've already done my reading up, but I'll be honest, I'm still going to need a fair bit of help with this one.
Yeah. Fortunately, I did some refresher reading, and I also have read a lot of this over various times. So there's a lot of different aspects that are coming back and stuff. But feel free, if you're watching the stream, to be like, what about this thing? And that is totally fine and welcome, particularly on the stream, because I think I've got damn as much as I need is up in here. But the last week for me, of course, has been very, very crazy because my Donathon ended yesterday.
Donathon.
It went extremely well. It went a little too well, some might argue. And we're here.
No, it's amazing.
Yeah, so a lot of stuff.
You have to tell everyone who didn't actually take part in your Donathon what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, so amidst a lot of other things, a lot of various incentives, one of the extreme ones that I deliberately put at such a ridiculous number that because I was like, it's not going to happen. It did happening. So I have to go talk to the various haircut places in my area and find one that's willing to give me a Slayer crest haircut and also dye all of my hair red. Which I was having a conversation with my sister about it, and she was like, if you want that color, your hair's too dark, so you're probably gonna have to bleach your hair and then dye it.
Yep, that's how it'll work.
And it was like, great. This sounds like such a lovely use of time.
It is the best use of time. I'm going to enjoy this immensely. I'm looking forward to this more than I'm looking forward to pretty much anything this year. And that is, of course, Ryan with a Slayer haircut.
One of the funny things that got asked on stream that I'm actually dealing with now is someone asked a question I had not considered until the Donathon was literally over, where someone was like, how are you going to wear your headphones? Slayer crest. It was like, oh yeah, yeah. Just wear them front loaded.
Fine.
But yeah, so that's gonna be a whole thing. But we'll figure our way through it. Should be
earbuds is the way forward.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. I'm trying to think if I can. I'm really tempted to go to like a little one of the costume stores around here and see if I can get like a muscle suit, like for the upper body, and then paint it with Slayer tattoos.
You need one?
Just do the full thing. Just do the full thing at that point.
Are you sure you need one?
Yeah,
you're already stacked.
Nah, I see myself every day. I'm well aware of my limits. All right. Plus, I don't want to risk Twitch just randomly deciding like, oh, that's not allowed, and just banning me for being shirtless on stream. So
fans love it.
But that'll be a whole thing. But in any event, today is going to be our so this week's a little crazy. For those that haven't been following along, we had some problems this past Sunday because StreamYard's just kind of imploded for some reason, and we just were not able to stream for some reason. So we decided to push Village to later this week. We were going to push him to Wednesday, but then I remembered that we're supposed to do the Nethu stream tomorrow with Lindsay and Vera. So so we have now bumped Village over to Thursday. So yeah, just hang around and keep an eye out for like updates on the Discord and everything, because schedule's a little crazy this week, but we are planning to get all those streams in. He says as he realizes that he hasn't actually put out a notification about the stream right here, and is doing that right now in the background.
Good job.
Do keep your eyes out. This is going to be kind of a crazy busy week. But then over on Sunday, we are also going to do we're going to be talking about Dwarden, the Dwarden of Age of Sigmar. So like I said, a lot going on, but it should be a good time. But this is going to be like a pretty nice little chill stream where we're going to be discussing a lot about the various the major 8 Stormhosts. And if you're sitting there going, well, how do you determine the major 8? We're essentially talking about what's often known as the first striking, which is basically the
Are you sure? 8. Some of the ones we've chosen are second striking, I think.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
These are the 8. Sorry, these are the most 8 common ones you're going to see by picking up the army books. So like if you pick up the army books in like the sub-faction section or the section that they're going to be talking about all of the different Stormhosts, these are the 8 that tend to come up the most. It's not an all definitive list because there is a shit ton of Stormhosts. They're very, very similar in a lot of ways to Space Marine Chambers. If you're chapters, that's right. If you're familiar with that, but these are there are similarities and differences. But
basically, what we've got here is just a sampling of them, because for a lot of you, we're fully aware that you don't know much about Age of Sigmar. So diving in with 321 different versions of your Age of Sigmarines would make people pretty, not just annoyed, but bored. So what we're going for is the core ones, the ones that'll give you a good idea of what they're like, who they're like, what they do, why they do it the way that they do. And it'll give me an opportunity as well to learn a bit about them, because for me, a lot of this is pretty new. I even did that little thing that I remember telling people ages ago about Space Marines, where I went, yeah, you can paint them any color you want, but the colors mean something. And I was like, oh, look, the different ones have got different colors for reasons. It's not just, they really are like Space Marines. There was quite a lot of that today when I was going through all the various different versions of my Age of Sigmar Sigmarines. So yeah, I really enjoyed that today. So we're going to be taking a sampling of them. Obviously, there's only 8 of them out of the bajillions that are out there, but I think it'll give us a good opportunity to dive into the lore of each, have a chat about them, what we think about them, and then tier those bad boys up, because we have, of course, as always, an entire tier list, a list that we will share later. So if you want to go and tier them up yourself and go and dive into our Discord and say how we were wrong, or how indeed the chat were wrong, and how you would do it instead, you can do that and post it. In fact, we've already, I hope, he said, moving over, opened up a thread for over inside the Age of Sigmar forum. If it's not open yet, it will be open very soon, because Hawk's working on that right now. So we're going to have a thread open just for this. If you want to go over and chat in our Discord, you can do that right now.
Yep, and we also get to celebrate that good old Hawk is now officially working with the Lorebeards. It's official now. So no longer do we have to go, oh no, we have to take care of that thing. We can just go, Hawk, can you take care of this thing? Anyway, but now it's official.
Yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for Hawk for all the times that he was doing this in the past and he wasn't being paid, but now he is being paid because Lorebeards are proper grown-ups. Yeah, so Lorebeards have staff helping them, which includes themselves, because we're staff really too. So that's that. Hawk is indeed employed and he rocks. No, let me just pull out this one. It's coming soon, Hawk. Or should I say more Hawk, because that's what we need.
Have to so I assumed safely, I think, that people would want me to record it and not just go and like do it quietly in some back alley.
I've never let anyone see it.
Yeah. So I have to talk with a couple of different places to find which place A is going to make sure to offer a reasonable price for what I'm going to be having done, and B, that they're comfortable with me bringing a friend in to record the experience. So I've got to just make sure I get approval. So I'm not just going to walk in to my usual haircut place and be like, I need you to do this outlandish, obscene thing with a camera and expect them to be okay with it, because that would be rude.
It would quite literally be, as Gary puts it there, a Lorebeards trimmed episode, because he's going to get trimmed. And if you haven't seen our Lorebeards trimmed, you should do it. We've got 2 of them out so far. One of them for the Dragon Ogres and one of them for the Dwarf Slayers. And we want to know what you think. So please go over, watch them. There are older videos that we did about 2-3 years ago, trimmed right down so it's just the lore snippets. And they've been re-edited absolutely and beautifully. So we'd like to know whether you agree they're worthwhile or not. Go dive over onto our channel later and check them out.
Yeah, especially because each one of them is notably different than the last, because there's all sorts of little improvements and tweaks and all sorts of other stuff. And yeah, if you're sitting there going, wait, you actually hit the goal, not only did we hit the 10K goal, we hit the goddamn 15K goal, which actually includes I'm going to fly over to Scotland and we're going to do something with Andy at some point.
It's going to be freaking awesome.
Yeah, later in the year. Not sure exactly what yet, but
we'll figure out all sorts of fun.
We will cross that bridge when we get to it, because God knows I've got enough on my plate at the moment.
It's now enough plus 1.
Yeah, we will figure that out soon. So I thank everyone very, very much for all the support. And I will, of course, give a notable shout out to Sion in particular. But thank you, everyone that came by and participated in that. It was absolutely freaking insane. So, yeah.
Okay, right. So before we get ourselves into all of our Stormcast being eternal and all hammery of Sigmar, let's dive into our first opening super chats. Have a little chat through those, and then we will move into our first, what do we call them? They're not the chambers, they're the what?
They're Stormhosts.
Stormhosts, of course they are. The first Stormhosts, which are split up into chambers, because I remember this.
Yeah, because that actually caused some funny confusion when we were initially settling this, because we had put chambers somewhere, because that sounds more like chapter, so like Space Marine chapters, Stormhost, or Stormcast Eternal chambers, but the chambers are completely different.
They totally are.
I'm so excited to be going back to Scotland.
Me too.
The last time we had an absolute ball, and this time we actually get to organize it with more time in advance than the last time. Last time was a rather it's an open secret now that I was there for a creative assembly thing, technically, so it was sort of a, hey, I'm gonna be here anyway, do you want to hang out? And it was a whole thing, and then I got super sick, which was just great.
It was perfect.
Archmage Eldrin, only the faithful, thank you so much for this. Operation Get All the Poster Factions of Lorebeards has been a success. I guess we now technically have achieved that. We've done, Space Marines have had a couple of Lorebeards episodes. The Empire obviously has had a few, and now the Stormcast Eternals have got one. Yeah, we have had all the poster boys. Dino Man and Eldrin, thank you for being the one that sponsored this stream. That's the way I'll say that now. That sounds more
good way of putting it. Sponsored. Yeah, I like that. Much less skeevy.
Dino Man, unrelated to stream, but I had an idea for a clan molder creature based on Rat Kings, where all the tails get tangled. Yeah. Basically, imagine a bunch of rats connected to a central body on the back end that kind of moves like a starfish with giant rats instead of each arm. Sounds gross. Great. Yeah, absolutely horrible. And you won't be the first to think of something like that, because Rat Kings are such a good source of potential scaven ideas that loads of people have given it a go. But I don't think I've seen a single one yet that makes me go, that's iconic. We need that. How much would I have to bribe Andy for him to take the oath with someone?
You have to bribe him a lot.
I mean, I asked for $10,000, so I mean,
yeah, like a lot. I've got barely any hair. It'd be more of a muh rather than a mohawk.
Yeah, if anything, we'd have to I don't know. We'd have to figure something out, or it would be like an investment. Andy has to grow his hair out for like 6 months and then do it. Luigi Super, I only care about Stormcast Eternals because they have Carl Franz, to be honest. We will discuss that and some other stuff as we get into it. Grim Isaac, I've set June 2nd aside for the God Invade What If. Now, should we have rules for God Invade What Ifs? like rules about how they arrive power levels and such. And if we do, will you guys decide or should the forum decide? So what I'm gonna say is this: after we get through the hell that's gonna be the next 3 days, and I say hell in a very affectionate way, we have a lot of Lorebeard streams that involve me and Andy coming up the next few days.
Yeah, we do.
Once those are over, so probably on this Friday, I'm gonna dip into that discussion thread, and we'll sit down and have kind of a bit of a chat about it. I do have it pulled up on my Discord, so I will come in there and we'll finagle stuff so that we can get all that stuff sorted. Dino Man, clearly Zinch wants Village's stream to take place on the 9th day of the week. Is that the 9th day of the week? What?
No, the 9th would be the 9th. What? wait, what? Dynamite, what? I'm so confused.
When did Thursday become the 9th day of the week? What? Where are the other 2 days?
Where's the other 2 days gone?
Christopher Steves, here's to a successful subathon and Andy's renovations. Can't wait to hear what your favorite Stormhost is at the end of this, or if you'd make your own.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this particular stream for almost exactly that. Not the subathon nonsense, because I'm not doing a subathon, but I am definitely interested to see what each of the different, what are they called again? Not chambers. Stormhosts. There we go. Stormhosts. I'll remember that. What each one of the different Stormhosts are actually like, rather than just what you pick up from a quick run through the rulebook, because I've read the Space Marine chapters a million times, but most books don't do a very good summary of what they're like. They pull upon a few keynotes, they drop whatever is the important fact of the day is, and then they move on without necessarily giving you enough to go, that's what these guys are. So I'm really looking forward to this and seeing which ones may, or indeed, if any, may interest me.
Biofoot, while in the AoS forums, please check out the league. Oh yeah, if you're watching this or whatever, and you're ever in the Age of Sigmar forums over on the Discord, do check out leak stuff, unless you're addressing that to me specifically, but you shouldn't super chat. If you're doing it to me specifically, just DM me or I'm going to forget. But we do have a very cool league going on, and I'll actually announce this on a stream now. I've been having a lot of fun with the league, and I'm really, really proud of how well organized it's been and how many people have been participating, that I'm actually going to be offering some incentives for the Season 3 League of AoS on the Lorebeards Discord, which is basically that I'm going to have 2 $50 Games Workshop vouchers
nice.
At the end of the season that will go to 2 individuals based on polls we'll do at the end of the season. One will be for the person that gets the most votes for being the favorite opponent of the season, and the other one will go to the person who we have little sections where you can like write lore about your army and all of your battles and stuff. The person who everyone that participated feels like had the best lore of the season. So you don't get anything for winning the most games, because that's dumb, and I think it encourages bad army building. But you do get stuff for being the most fun person to sit down with and all that stuff.
Not true. You'll get half a mini. Let's be honest. Let's be honest.
If you get like one of the old re-released fantasy models,
get a paint pot. Here's your paint pot.
Yeah, you can get some paint. Stenchmeister, Michael Morak mentions, take a shot. Wait.
Cheers.
Dino Man, as a suggestion for the Mohawk procedure, since you will be losing a fair amount of hair, you might be able to collect it to donate for wig production. Not 100% sure if you'll be able to, but might be looking into. I mean, I can't imagine they would want, like, because it's only going to be like this part of my hair, because all this is just going to get stood up. So it's not like I'm going to lose some hair, but it probably won't be as much as you think. But I don't know. I'll ask them about it. We'll see what happens. Matthew, who will be at the top of S tier? There is one correct answer.
Is there?
Do I sense people actually caring about how things are ranked?
I actually don't know which one will be potentially top or bottom or mid. I have no idea at all. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you all think.
Yeah. Sengemeister, do we have a Lorebeards bingo / drinking game yet? I would never encourage a drinking game, because some idiot's going to put a Michael Moorcock reference thing on there, and one of these random streams you'll kill yourself. So we are.
So a couple of them have already been made, and they've been shared in various parts of the internet. And I know the Lawhammer Discord had one of them sitting up for a while, and indeed Michael Moorcock reference was one of them, as was a host of our more commonly said phrases, and me going off on a rant and you know, the sort of stuff. So yeah, they are out there. I don't know who made them. I'll maybe go have a look afterwards.
Yeah, please drink responsibly. From there, Ice Veins, do you think Felix will ever make an appearance at Age of Sigmar? And if so, should he be a Stormcast? Will Felix ever make an appearance? Honest to God, well, okay. I think if Games Workshop ever has flagging sales and they really, really want to put out something that they think will be very easy money, they will bring back Felix to AoS. Would he be a Stormcast at that point? I don't think he would, because I think they would want to maximize nostalgia value. So they would probably have him brought back through a much weirder means. But I personally don't think he's ever going to come back. That is my thought on it. I think they are very...
Yeah, I think saying Felix won't come back is a little bit like saying when they killed Superman, he's never going to come back. And by I mean Games Workshop's a little bit like comic books, and that is that no character is ever truly dead. If they want to bring someone back, they will. And if they think it'll make a difference, they'll do it. And just because this generation of writers will say, I'm never doing that, that's completely against what we want to do, and no way stops the next generation going, hey, this thing, I'd like to bring it back. And it would not surprise me if something like Felix did indeed make an appearance at some point, because someone's just a fan and they want to do it, and off comes the mask and, oh my goodness, it's Felix under there. What a shocker. It'd be rubbish. I'd rather they didn't. I'd rather they did something better. But yeah, I can see it occurring.
Yeah, the Primarchs are never coming back.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, Mr. Mike, it's exactly what I was thinking on. When I was in Games Workshop quite some time ago, I remember having this conversation, and the conversation was, they're never doing it, ever, because that would absolutely ruin 40k. They'll leave it in 30k. That's where they deserve to be. They will never do it. No one wants to do it. It would completely ruin the game. Did they do it? Yes.
So with that, we're caught up. So
the time has
come for us to get into our first Stormhost. We're gonna cheat a little bit, because we're not gonna do it in the order that's on here written at this exact moment in time, because we want to start with the true poster boys.
I think they're already there. Number one.
Oh, they are? Okay.
Yeah, I moved them.
Okay, there you go. I didn't realize. But we got that in alphabetical order, which made sense. But we're going to start with the poster boys.
Because you have to. And if you don't know who the poster boys are, you're wrong. You do know who the poster boys are. You just might not know what their name is. The classic version of every single one of these blighters, these Stormcast individuals, is these guys. Every single picture you've seen on the front of books, on the front of boxes, is pretty much these guys. You are going to recognize them, not because you know their stories, but because you know what they look like. They are the Hammers of Sigmar.
Yes. So the Hammers of Sigmar are the classic, brilliant gold and blue boys that when you look at, you kind of squint to go like, oh, they're kind of like reverse ultramarine colors a little bit, but they are the very, very first Stormcast Eternals that we ever saw pop out for Age of Sigmar. And because of that, their legacy is a rather interesting one. Of that, when you look at them, you might think that they're going to be the most basic bitch of all, to put it very bluntly, of all of the different Stormhosts, because they were the first and they kind of set the stage. They were very much the foundation. And when they initially arrived, that's very much what they were. We met them before first edition even started, with the opening salvo into what's now known as the Realmgate Wars on the Brimstone Peninsula, where they fought against the hosts of Khorne in this lovely little box set that you got that had Korgus Cool versus Vandis Hammerhand, which Vandis Hammerhand was the first like big bad named character that we got to meet being the legendary Lord Celestant which is basically kind of like the chapter master of the Hammers of Sigmar. Now, for what defines them, the thing that I find really, really interesting about the Hammers of Sigmar is that in first edition, and debatably kind of second edition as well, the Hammers of Sigmar were very much, I say this with love, but in some ways they were in many ways kind of the most boring of the Stormhost.
Think of them like the Ultramarines in 40k. And for those of you who know your 40k lore, the Ultramarines are what are considered to be the standard. They are, by many people's consideration, the best of the best. They are the ones that stalwartly designed everything that it is to be a Space Marine. They stand head and shoulders above everyone else. They put them on all the box sets, Ultramarines everywhere, and the good old Smurf Marines are the ones that most people think are the most bog standard and boring because of that, because they're everywhere, even though they are pitched as the best example that Space Marines are.
Yep. And you have a lot of focus on that. They are like Andy said, they started off as being the best of everything ever. Of that, they start off with being like the largest Stormhost because they were the first Stormhost, and they were forged to be thrown to battle, and they got unleashed upon the Brimstone Peninsula, and they had the first great victory. And as the stories continue to churn onwards, they continue to kind of be like the best of that. When we got the major update going into third edition of what's known as the Extremis Chamber, which to TLDR, the Stormcast Eternals, the way that each Stormhost is organized, they're broken down into chambers, which are like specialized formations or groups within each Stormhost. So you have like the Extremis Chamber, which are more of an elite force group that like ride on dragons, and are like your hardcore badasses over there. You have the Vanguard Chamber, which are more of a branch that focuses on scouting, light cavalry fare, hit and run tactics, stuff like that. So you have like a bunch of these different focus groups. And for a long time, you had it with the Hammers of Sigmar, where every time a new chamber would kind of get announced, they were not always, but often the big bads of that. So like in first edition, we had the original Stormhosts, and it's like, oh, the Hammers of Sigmar is the best boys. Second edition, they took more of a backseat to some other chambers that we'll talk about a little bit, where we got more of a focus on magic, which wasn't really the Hammers of Sigmar's forte. But then in third edition, we revolved back around with the unleashing of the Extremis Chambers to them being the biggest and the baddest. And it's like they have the best tactics, like they have the best tacticians among all the Stormhosts, and everything about them is super cool and super awesome. And it's like, okay, these guys are all right. They're kind of boring. And then something happened, which is that the end of third edition started to roll up, and the Stormcast Eternals became more and more and more interesting, I will say, because there was something dark and terrible building in the background, which we're going to focus on more with some other chapters. But for the Hammers of Sigmar, it's worth noting that as
chambers,
Stormhosts,
Stormhosts.
Yeah. So the big thing for the Stormcast Eternals to understand, that we're going to be talking a lot about today, but in different flavors, is that they are immortal. So if you don't know what a Stormcast Eternal is, which is actually probably where I should have started the stream, Stormcast Eternals are people. They were once humans. There are rumors and myths that they might be more than just humans originally, but we have it. There's no strict confirmations that any of them came from anything but humans, but there are rumors. But anyway, they are people that at some point in their life, their mortal life, they get zapped up by a lightning bolt. There are exceptions to this, which we'll talk about a little later. And their souls are basically zapped up by Sigmar in a great bolt of lightning, and they're stolen away to Azir, the realm of heavens, where he would literally take their soul, place it on this great artifice structure called the Anvil of Apotheosis, and then you have the 6 kind of gods, but they're more like demigods, known as the 6 smiths, with these great hammers, who are actually more like dwarven gods than human gods, who would hammer at their souls and remake them into something greater and infuse them with some of Sigmar's divine essence. And they are made into these immortal demigods that have just enough of a god's essence within them that they're basically like super hardcore chaos warriors. You can kind of think of it that way. But they're very big dudes that and ladies that have incredible power gifted to them by Sigmar, so they tend to have like a lot of lightning powers and lightning motifs and concepts, and they're all dressed up in this special armor that's called Sigmarite, because first edition naming conventions were a thing. And Sigmarite is made of this legendary golden material that was the core of the world that was. So the original Warhammer Fantasy Planet, the core of it was made of a unique metal that apparently was like the strongest substance in all of existence. And Sigmar and Grugni had it made into a bunch of suits of armor and weapons and yada yada that they wear. But their immortality is flawed in that when they die, they basically discorporate, kind of like demons do, into lightning, and they zap back to Azir. And then they have to be reforged again. And the reforging process is literal torture. It is a horrific, very, very difficult, painful, agonizing process of having someone's soul with all of its memories and issues and problems basically forcefully shaped into a form that will fit into the body that they're making for this soul. And that means hammering the flaws out of it. And this will cause all sorts of different problems, where every time someone is reforged, in order to basically break them down and rebuild them into a form that can then be utilized, they have to go through a process that causes them to lose little bits and pieces of themselves. So they might lose a memory. They might forget what the faces of their best friend looked like. They might forget what their mom's voice sounded like. They might forget how they originally died. They might forget how many times they've been reforged. Maybe their emotions become more dulled. Maybe they forget all of the lovers they've ever had. There are little pieces of their humanity that get shaved off every time they die. So they're essentially immortals with dementia, but the dementia is kicked in by them dying. And there's a whole story we don't have time for about that. That's core to the narrative of the Stormcast, where they didn't really know this at the beginning because Sigmar just didn't tell them. Sigmar knew that the reforging process was flawed, but he didn't tell the vast majority of them. They kind of had to figure it out for themselves, which leads to the whole thing in 4th edition of like Sigmar Light. So how does this tie back to our Hammers of Sigmar? Well, the Hammers of Sigmar, as the narrative advanced, someone at GW had a very bright idea that I actually really, really liked, which is that someone sat down and went, so this is the biggest Stormhost, who are the first Stormhost, and they have seen the most action out of all of the Stormhosts. So therefore, it stands to reason that they have died the most, and they're going to have severe problems. And this was accurately adapted into 3rd edition with the following the story of Vandus Hammerhand leading into 4th edition. So Vandus, as one of the big cool Lord Celestants of the Hammers of Sigmar, and the very first Lord Celestant we ever met, the first one we ever got to hang out with. He was basically almost like the Gilliman or the Marnius Calgar, but he was like the super cool, badass, noble hero that rides on his little dragon horse, and he has no flaws. He's a great man. When he was a mortal man, he was fighting against the Warriors of Khorne as a man, like a mortal person, and he was this super epic hero, and he was stolen away at the last second by Sigmar before he died, and Sigmar remakes him, and then he goes and he fights Korgoskul and basically gets his revenge, and there's a whole thing. But Vandis keeps dying and dying and dying and dying. And yeah, there he is. There's good old Vandis. And as the narrative advances, we get to keep seeing him. And Vandis keeps having these like visions of this guy he calls the Lightning Man, which one thing you'll learn about the Stormcast that's actually very interesting, that very few people know about them unless you read a lot of the lore, is that the Stormcast Eternals are extremely religious, but not just to Sigmar. They are a very, very polytheistic group that tend to worship lots of different gods. Depending on the individual Stormhost, there is one Stormhost that's actually monotheistic, but the vast majority of them are more polytheistic. And Vandis keeps seeing this entity that he knows as the Lightning Man. And it sort of represents, in many ways, his loosening on sanity as he is continually reforged and he keeps losing bits and pieces of himself. And each individual Stormcast expresses this differently. But the Hammers of Sigmar, as they keep dying and keep dying and keep dying, you find out that Vandis, among all of the Stormcast characters you kind of start with at the beginning, he slowly becomes more and more isolated as all of the guys that he started off with kept failing their reforgings. They died so many times that they lost so much of themselves that when they would try to be reforged for like the millionth time, their souls were so damaged that they basically would burst off the anvil of apotheosis as these horrible Geist known as lightning Geist, because it's like a spirit that's purely made out of lightning that is screaming and howling in agony because it doesn't remember who it is. It doesn't remember what its name is. It's scared. It's basically having like a horrific anxiety attack, but it's also made of pure god wrath and just starts flailing around Sigmar's castle or his keep, destroying a bunch of nonsense, and they get captured and sealed away. And this gets revealed in 4th edition that all of these guys are being sealed away in what's known as the Ruination Chamber. And what's revealed with Vandis is that we get this big storyline building up that as Vandis had to keep getting reforged, he lost more and more of his sanity until he became utterly obsessed with his original rival back in 1st edition, Korgoskul. And in the end, as a bit of a spoiler, but it's a long story. I'd recommend you read it, but it takes forever and it's really hard to get all the books now. Vandis goes from being the one great hero against the ultimate bad guy cannibal lord Korgoskul, and the story ends up being that Korgoskul finds, in a way, through much loss and suffering but like really giving himself over to Khorne and engaging in bloodlust and letting go of his rivalry with Vandis, Korgoskul in a Khornate way finds peace and like inner strength and ascends to becoming a Khornate demon prince. While Vandis goes genuinely insane trying to track him down, killing anything that gets in his way and becoming so much more of a problem to his allies than a boon that his story ends with him quite literally being essentially locked up in the Stormcast equivalent of an asylum until he can be rebuilt in a way to serve under the Ruination Chamber. But I don't think he's actually been unleashed as part of the Ruination Chamber because he's still too dangerous. And so the Hammers of Sigmar end up going from being the absolute golden boys, literally, of Age of Sigmar to being one of, if not the most broken of all of the Stormhosts, because they've been so overutilized by Sigmar. They've been so consistently pumped out, and Sigmar just keeps throwing them into conflict after conflict after conflict because he needs to. But they're the ones who are the great mouthpiece of the concept that Sigmar lied. He lied to them. And many of them have come to resent him in a way, but they have one of the largest, if not the largest, ruination chambers, because they're basically a Stormhost that used to be made up of heroes, and now it's made up of emotionally dead, borderline automaton-like PTSD victims that are immortal, so they can't ever be put to rest. And so they release them into the zones that are too dangerous for regular Stormcast, because being the Ruination Chamber, a lot of them are so charged with energy that they have all sorts of weird mutations and stuff. So like their hair might be like made out of lightning, or they might breathe out storm clouds, or they're absolutely bonkers people now. And they've had this very fascinating evolution from just being the best of the Stormhost to the absolute most broken of the Stormhosts.
So it's kind of super fun as a story. What we've got is the very first of them. This is the first host, and they were the poster children of Age of Sigmar all the way up into the most recent edition. They were on pretty much every single last piece of art that you would find. Those gold and blue, I don't want to call them Sigmarines all the time. Let's call them the Stormcast Eternals as they are. The gold and blue Stormcast Eternals. And they were the ones that you saw pretty much no matter where you went when you first encountered Age of Sigmar. They wanted these to be in your head all the time going, how cool are these? And as they moved through the editions, they then went, oh, right, okay, we need to do a little bit more of an interesting story. And the story they chose to do was to show that the existence that they have as the front line of the Stormcast Eternals is in fact slowly but surely wearing them away. As each time they die, they are, as Ryan put it, shaved away memory by memory, experience by experience, until eventually they become God-created killing automatons. Their character just gone, and they become maddened monsters. How cool is that? So where are we going to sit on the old tier list for these dudes?
Well, so I think SABC definitely, but there is one last thing I want to note about them, because they're characters. You might consider their characters worth including on it. You might not, but the kind of the big ones that are still major players. So you have Ionis Cryptborn, which Ionis Cryptborn is probably the most famous of what's known as the Lord Relictors, which are these guys that wear the skull mask, and they're kind of in charge of guarding the souls of the Stormcast Eternals. They're wizards in their own right, but they lean more on like the priestly side of things as opposed to the mage side of things. And Ionis has kind of had to take over a lot of what's going on with the Hammers of Sigmar due to the falling of Vandus Hammerhand. And now he rides on like this really, really cool dragon that he's friends with, and they run around and do a bunch of stuff. But you also have the Celestant Prime. Now, the Celestant Prime, who for a long time was completely unnamed, he's just known as the Celestant Prime, is the first ever Stormcast that was forged. He is the first of all of them. And debatably, he's not technically part of the Hammers of Sigmar, because he has like kind of a magic nonsense where whenever he basically gets teams up with the Stormhost, his armor quite literally like magically changes, and he just joins up with whoever. But he is very much the spiritual leader of the Celestant Prime. Like they look to him in all things. And it took until literally 4th edition for there to be a White Dwarf article that focused with Grugny being the narrator, where we basically get a whole thing. We get this whole article that focuses on characters of the world that made it into Age of Sigmar. And one of the characters that gets featured is the Celestant Prime. And after literally 10 years of this setting, where the Celestia Prime, I think, came out in the first year of Age of Sigmar, they did finally confirm that the Celestia Prime is Karl Franz. That after Sigmar possessed his body when he died against the Glotkin, it essentially, his soul was the first that Sigmar kind of took into his fold. And that when Sigmar awoke in the mortal realms and he started creating the Stormcast Eternals, the first soul that he had within his possession that he made into one of these immortal demigods, and the greatest among them, the one that he gives Golmaraz to represent him on the battlefield, is good old Franzi. Though Karl Franz does not remember anything about himself. It's not like Karl Franz is like, haha, it's me, Franz. I've been here all along. He has been so utterly remade that he remembers nothing and just acts to fulfill the purpose he has been given in a very almost mechanical fashion. He is less of a person and more of a force, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. Sigmar has turned him into one of the undead, an immortal undead automaton that does his will.
You can argue a monster.
Okay, he's basically, I was about to say monster. He's basically done exactly the same as Nagash does, just in a slightly different fashion. Okay, he's no better, he's no worse. He's doing exactly the same thing, creating eternal monsters, warriors, whatever you wish. And he has eroded all their character. Rather amusingly, if you take a look at how Chaos was described back in the first Realms of Chaos books, all the way back in 3rd edition Warhammer, Chaos was basically pitched like this. They are horrendous, monstrous, almost alien gods that have no concern at all for mortality. And if you join them, if you become one of their champions moving through their ranks, your soul is slowly stripped away as each act you do takes you one step closer towards chaos. And that eventual end is you turn into an enormous chaos warrior. A chaos warrior with no memory of the people you once loved, the people you once hated. You are nothing more than the living will and the embodiment of the god which you now manifest for. So Tzeentch turns you into a Tzeentch chaos warrior, Khorne turns you into a Khorne chaos warrior, or Sigmar turns you into a Sigmar chaos warrior.
Yep.
It's amusing for the not just the similarities, it's identical. It's almost like they're doing the same thing.
Which we will dive in heavy with that with one of the Stormhosts. One of the Stormhosts, that's a major aspect of their storyline.
Sounds great.
But I think that's enough for the Hammers.
Way more than enough. We're already like an hour in and we've only done one.
Yeah, but to be fair, we're setting the foundation. The rest of them, we kind of are able to take what we did and move off of that.
Damn straight.
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start up the polls, and then we'll get caught up on Super Chats.
It's poll time. Give your votes. Are these the best or are they the worst? What do you think they are? For those of you who know U40K, the Ultramarines of the setting. And in many respects, they follow many similar beats. And you might be thinking, wait, aren't these Stormcast Eternals just like Space Marines, but for fantasy? Yeah, we all know they are. Let's not try and pretend that there's something that they're not. Having said that, though, this is their second stab at utilizing this form of, let's say, army building. So they've taken the old armies from the past, often Roman armies, repitched them as future warriors, made a bunch of mistakes along the way, and then tried to do it again with Age of Sigmar. And they've gone, here's our new version, and their stories are a little bit deeper sometimes, but not always. You're going to find out as we make our way through them that some shine a little bit more than others.
Yeah, and I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it right now. I'm going to say it in front of all you people live right now on twitch.tv/YouTube. The Stormcast Eternals are what GW wishes the Space Marines were. And you might go, what are you talking about? And I'll say, I'll talk a little bit more as we get more into it. But like, I stand by that. I stand by that. And I'll explain why more as we go.
And again, if you want to know what they're like as a general group, the Hammers of Sigmar are but they're almost the metric by which everybody else is measured. They're on the front line. They don't specialize in any one area. They're not the most devout. They're not the most insane. They're not the most anything. What they are is good at everything. and they have been on pretty much every war front that Age of Sigmar has to offer.
Yep. All right, so I'm gonna get caught up on some super chat stuff while we're doing that. We left off here. Matthew Adam Steele. It's a common refrain for the HoloLens to ask who questions, and others respond, "Only the faithful," as a rallying cry. Yeah, the Hammers and Sigmar. I think their phrase is, are they? I think they're the ones that say much is. I think it's much is, owed to those. Like, oh god, it's like. Much is owed to those who are given much. It's not like that. I'm saying it wrong. Someone in chat will remember like the full thing, but they have a kind of a cute.
First to be forged, never to fail. They apparently say that a lot.
Yeah, they have a.
Except when they do fail.
Am I thinking of a different? Am I thinking of a different Stormhost? I could have sworn theirs is like much is owed to whom much is given or something like that. But whatever. All right. Oh god, we got more of these to go. Bobfoot, Hammer Sigmars do be ordering PSLs in fall. I don't know what that means.
What's PSLs? Someone's going to have to tell me what a PSL is. I'm old. I don't understand acronyms. Help!
Biofoot definitely has the highest rating of super chats that I have no fucking idea what he's talking about.
Like, Biofoot does some of the best crazy questions and Ask Me Anything when he comes along, and I'm like, oh no, I'm going to look this up. I don't know the answer.
Sotek, do you know this mathematical formula that like 99.99% of humans have never heard of? Ricky Chapman.
Yeah, that one.
We want Felix to come back as a Bone Reaper. Would be spicy. That would be a lot more interesting, honestly. But I just don't think he needs to come back. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I'd rather explore Gotrek's story as becoming a god than do Felix stuff. Also, thank you to the brave souls who pay attention to the Twitch chats and write down their results. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Dino Man, for dropping that one in. It's super appreciated.
All right, and time. Because we're going to try and keep moving at a good pace here. Okay, so pretty overwhelmingly in both chats, we have a solid A for the Hammers of Sigmar.
A. Okay, let's move that one up to the A. So, do you think that is a fair place to put them? Are they the A tier Sigmarines for you? Sorry, Stormcast Eternal. I'll stop saying it. I'm a bad person, I know.
I think A is fine for if it wasn't for how their story evolved very, very, very late, where they leaned much more into the ruination aspect. I would say they're a C tier. But as they became they went from the poster boys to like, oh my god, look how broken and fucked up they are. That made me fall in love with them. Like around the end of third edition, they became one of my favorite Stormhosts, personally.
Yeah. Upon reading them, I was left with, oh god, here we go. As it's going through the basic core of what they are. They're the best of this. They're the best of that. Look at Sigmar's guys be special in Sigmar. They're going out and hitting things with hammers. They're holier than anyone else, except for the ones who are super holy. They're super brilliant. They're faster than anyone else, except for the ones who are super fast. They're super brilliant. They ride bigger things than anyone else, except for the ones that ride big things. They're basically the poster child of the entire concept of the Stormcast. So, of course, there's individual groups, Stormhosts, that are better than them, but in general they're better than everyone else. And it just left me going, yeah, okay, so the big golden boys up in heaven are Sigmar's favorites, the first ones he made. This is not interesting at all. Like at all. This is them just pinning down the concept. Now, to pin down the concept, you have to do a lot of this work. You have to lay out the world building, and this is what the standard template is. But even the way they built that standard template was all jingoistic nonsense. They're brilliant, they're the best, you must like them because we say so, yeah. And I didn't. However, as it developed on and their story moved on, you could almost see them going, oh, no one likes them. Okay, well, let's really tear them apart, because there's nothing like tearing apart something that's not a favorite to turn it into a favorite. Classic example of this, if you want to go to other media, is someone like Ahsoka over in Star Wars. When she first came out, Snips, in the cartoon, everybody hated her. Then they just kept on telling her story. And slowly but surely, over time, everyone went from hating her to absolutely despising her to going back to hating her, to going, oh, wait a minute, she's actually got a story. Okay, I'm watching now, to her becoming eventually a fan favorite. And in some respects, that's how I feel about the Hammers of Sigmar. They are so dull, so annoying, too good, oh my God. And then they started telling a story with them, and suddenly they become a little bit more interesting. I can't help but say they're barely an A for me yet. I kind of can't help but want to put them at a B, because they haven't really done enough with them yet for me to go, they're amazing. What they have done is use them a lot. And because they've used them so much, and pretty much all the editions, they've got the lion's share of the stories. They've just got more put aside for them. And in some respects, that just stops them from being terrible and brings them up to, okay, there's some good stories in there. But so many of them are also kind of bobbins. I kind of like them, but I think I'd probably be them.
That's fair. All right. Where are we off to next, Andy?
Is it going to be the Anvils of Heldenhammer? By any chances, we now are apparently going into alphabetical order. The Anvils
I
of
think that works
Heldenhammer.
just fine.
Yeah,
All right. The Anvils of the Heldenhammer. So the Anvils of the Heldenhammer are the very macabre and some might say death-obsessed Stormhosts that have the eldest of souls among them. So for most of the Stormcast Eternals, the vast majority of them were people that were alive somewhere in the mortal realms when Sigmar zapped them up and stole them away, as some might put it, to Azir to have them reforged as the Stormcast Eternals. The Anvils of the Heldenhammer are very different in that they are individuals very spooky. They're individuals who the vast majority of them were already long dead before their souls were taken by Sigmar into Azir to be reforged into Stormcast. So this means that these are people that have been dead for centuries, if not millennia, if not way beyond millennia, and had been basically just existing in their afterlives. Some of them were enjoying a form of peace or eternal bliss, or just a quiet existence in the afterlife that they were drawn to within Shyish, because Shyish in the mortal realms is basically a giant motley collection of underworlds, where if somebody dies and they genuinely believe something specific is going to happen to them when they die, then their soul goes to that place, and Shyish basically manifests the afterlife that they believe is waiting for them, for good or ill. So you have like these large civilizations that basically go to the afterlife that they believe in, and you have all these different death gods. But of course, Nagash ends up taking over and consuming many of these other death gods and many of these other afterlives and yada yada. So some of them were basically in a paradise or a quiet existence, and they got zapped up and stolen. Some of them were basically captured by Nagash and were being contained within his great oubliette, or one of his other various prisons, where he was holding souls to remake them in his own image. And they got quite literally stolen from Nagash by Sigmar and zapped up. Some of them were in forgotten underworlds and had been dead for so long that they actually do not come from the mortal realms. They come instead from the world that was. As many people I see in chat are saying, there is a very cool Stormcast, a character a lot of people like, named Balthus Aurum, who is revealed throughout the course of his story to literally just be Balthazar Gelt. Balthazar Gelt, he died, his soul went to the afterlife, and he kind of persisted until Sigmar zapped him up and remade him into an Anvil of the Heldenhammer. Now, the Anvils of the Heldenhammer are a bit of a curious group, because when they were initially forged, many of them were upset. They were not thrilled that they had been remade into these immortal entities that had to fight for eternity, essentially. A lot of them quite literally privately held that Sigmar had stolen them wrongly from their own, because they didn't get a say. When Sigmar zaps you up, it's not like you get to have a meeting where Sigmar's like, hey, here's the proposal for you to become an immortal warrior that fights for me for eternity and is also like fundamentally broken, but I'm not going to mention that part. You want to sign up? No, it's not optional. He will steal you and remake you in his image, whether you like it or not. And a lot of the anvils, because they were such ancient souls, a lot of them made it through the reforging process. And they had many private debates about if what Sigmar did was wrong, and that he basically violated them. And that's a concept many of them held on to initially. However, the core tenet that ends up seizing them as the storyline develops is that when many of them start dying in their various battles, they get reforged, they realize that Sigmar has created a system that allows them to die, but kind of escape death in a sense, and more importantly, escape the clutches of Nagash. And they see this as an opportunity to fight against Nagash. So many of them that came from underworlds that were ultimately devoured and subsumed by Nagash see this as a great boon that saves them from eternal damnation, or at least holds it off. And they can use this opportunity to fight back against Nagash. Some of them believe that this is the chamber that's kind of the most obsessed with trying to cure. What?
Stormhost,
yes, sorry. This is the Stormhost that is the most obsessed with trying to cure the flaw of the Stormcast Eternals. And they notably have a notable, they're kind of the poster boy Stormhost for the Chamber of the Sacrosanct, which the Sacrosanct Chamber is made up of a lot of wizards who are very obsessed with trying to cure the flaw in the Stormcast Eternals reforging process. But they also kind of have a bit of a lingering horror hovering over them. You can almost say they're kind of elf-like if you think about how elves have the relationship with Slaanesh, where Nagash fucking hates the Anvils of the Heldenhammer because he views them utterly as stolen property. And one of his greatest goals is to get them back and to break them and make them into something horrific. There's a book out there called Soul Wars, which is actually a really, really good book that actually shows one of the Anvils of the Heldenhammer, despite being quote-unquote immortal, getting captured by Nagash and twisted into an absolute fucking nightmare. Now, eventually he's killed, and that allows him to go back into the reforging process. But so you have that important note. These guys are very obsessed with death. They have a lot of very death aspects. The way that their reforging tends to present itself is they have some unique quote-unquote mutations, where most Stormcast Eternals, if you take off their armor, they just look like really big humans. Like they're just very, very large humans, like ogre-sized humans.
Like Space Marines.
Yeah, like Space Marines, but without all of the weird like bolts in them, and there's men and women. And they tend to have more human-like proportions. They're not as like necessarily quote-unquote grotesque, though Games Workshop nowadays makes all their Space Marines look like Adonis models, which is not what Space Marines should look like, but anyway. So the Anvils, though, underneath their armor tend to be very like pale, almost shriveled, withered looking people. Like they look like almost like living corpses. As the expression of like how they tend to mutate from various reforgings. But the most important thing about them is that they open our discussion to that the Anvils of the Heldenhammer, while they revere Sigmar the most, they are a polytheistic Stormhost. And the other god that they worship like they hold basically at the same level or just barely below is Morda. Yeah, the Pale Rider, the master of the Bleak Raven, who is, it's literally more from
fantasy. There we go.
Yeah, and it's revealed, which ties into the fact that many of these guys are souls from Warhammer Fantasy, that when many of them died, Morda is the god that took them in. Yep. That is the afterlife they went to. That there's a huge legend that if the rumors about Age of Sigmar getting reset are true, I'm going to be really sad to see the storyline go unresolved. But there's a huge storyline about the conflict between Nagash and Morda, where Nagash, quote unquote, killed Morda, but Morda was so clever and so wise that the Raven God of Death basically managed to survive divine death. What is death to a death god is kind of like the little quote thrown around to it. But Morda essentially survived. And the Anvils of the Helden Hammer are deeply reverent of Morda and seek to not only bring about the resurgence of the cult of Morda and have introduced it into many of the cities of Sigmar where they have influence, but they also basically fight a lot of their wars against Nagash and look for ways to sort of manipulate their deployments that Sigmar sends them out on to accomplish their private mission, which is to seek out Morda, to bring Morda back, to empower Morda, in the hopes that Morda will one day be able to take on and maybe drag down Nagash, which is a whole discussion that we don't have time for, because Nagash is actually really interesting in AoS, that he's not the true god of death. He's more of the usurper of the realm of death, but we don't have time for that right now. And that is the Anvils.
So, the Anvils, let's summarize these guys. They are the Stormcast of Death. And why is that? Well, multiple reasons. One, a lot of the Stormcast have strong influences from one of the Winds of Magic. And one of the Winds of Magic is, of course, Shyish. And Shyish, the Wind of Death, has these Stormcast to pretty much represent them. They wear black armor, they often work in sepulchral tomes, and they often live in sepulchral tombs as well. They are pretty much the Stormcast of Death. They are, in terms of where they came from, the spirits of the dead made manifest one more time. The spirits that were presumably saved by Morda, whom they do revere with some significance and have spread the worship of Morda throughout the various places that they visited. You like the way I'm saying Morda each time?
No, it's the fact that you that it went from he said that once to no, he's going to do that every time.
Oh yeah, every single time. And cut a long story short, they're everything that you would expect for death-obsessed writers. Writers always do the same thing with the people who are champions of death. They make them emaciated, they make them brooding, they make them sepulchral, they make them sit there and go, how can we change these affairs? And it's what they are. They are walking, talking stereotypes. They're much like the last set, a walking, talking stereotype. But what's their more interesting story? And their more interesting story is they continue to be walking, talking stereotypes as they march their way against Nagash and do it again and again and again because they hate Nagash, don't you know? That's basically who these guys are. They're death-obsessed individuals who want to bring down Nagash. Do we need to say anything else?
I really think that's everything. They were the poster childs of second edition, and they lean very heavily into having the most priests and a shit ton of wizards.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty cool looking. They do have a lovely paint scheme, I will say that. Yeah, and who doesn't like to have pale dudes and dudettes inside black armor? I mean, if you want to have your goth, I was about to call them Space Marines again, your goth Stormcast, these are your guys, although they do quite a lot of gold as well.
Yeah, if you want that big titty goth DF, there you go.
That's the one to go for.
Right there.
That's the true fact.
I do love I feel like there's going to be at least one person in the audience that goes, S.
That's for me. I am going for that one. So yes, of course, given that they also resurrected Gelt, I reckon it should be an easy D for anybody. And if you don't put a D, I mean, who are you? Why are you even talking to me? And if you want me to rant and rave about Gelt, you know what needs to happen. We get Lawhammer to 10,000 subscriptions over on YouTube.
And we're so close.
We will be doing. We're only like about 600-700 people away. So 600-700 of you, press that link, and we will be doing Gelt, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yep.
So much.
Me.
S. So yeah, these are your Goth Stormhost chappies and chappette.
Ooh, this vote is actually really close. So get your votes in. Y'all are fighting between S and B.
Let's get through a bunch of super chats because we've got a bunch piled up.
Thank you for getting my attention there. Dopey Dumbo, are there Stormcasts which weren't human in their previous life? Elves, Dwarves, / Ulrics. Also, do redeemed Stormcasts suffer any kind of discrimination by other Stormcasts, or is the opposite? So, it is not confirmed, but there. Okay. The technical answer is: are there non-human Stormcasts? The technical answer is no. But there are Black Library authors who have went yes and winked at you really hard. Of that, there are implied to be Stormcasts that were elves or Dwarden or other species, but the official word would be no. There has been deliberate fuzzing. Do redeemed Stormcasts suffer any discrimination? Yes. So a redeemed Stormcast, for those that don't know, we don't have a super ton of time for this, but there is a Stormhost we're actually not going to be talking about today very much of, but there is a Stormhost, which is the redeemed, if I think that's their full name nowadays, which basically if you get bonked with Galmaraz got a power upgrade in Age of Sigmar, where if you kill a Chaos Warrior with it and they have anything in their soul, like usually it's people that were turned to Chaos against their will, that were like corrupted without against their own decisions. Galmaraz has the ability to quote unquote redeem them, where it basically breaks them free of their corruption and they're reforged as a Stormcast Eternal. This has caused genuine friction, and there are stories of discrimination and a lack of trust between those that have been redeemed from Chaos and those that were never with Chaos in the first place.
Yep. Sigmar's the worst. Continuing on.
If you want to look up stories about that, look up Tornus the Redeemed. Tornus. His story revolves very heavily around that, and he's a special character for the Stormcast. All right, and that is time.
We're going to need to get through our super chats faster. I think we've got quite a number of them stacked up.
Yeah, in fact, why don't we just go ahead and grab through?
Yeah, let's grab a few before we put up the anvils just to make sure.
Yeah, Dinoman, merge all the terms. Chapter hosts. I might as well.
I mean, that's as good as anything I'm saying. Yeah.
Pumpkin King Jack, howdy fellas. Cool to see y'all going into AoS. Yeah, this is our second one. We did a Marathi stream that we actually.
We've done 3. No, there's the third one because we had 2 Marathi streams.
Oh, that's right. Which was we had a really good time with.
Marathi was great. I enjoyed that one a
lot. Konstantin Sternkopf, maybe a stupid question. AoS is after the world they blew up. Do they walk on the ground still? Is there a new planet? I don't know how they live. Love y'all. That's not a stupid question.
It's not a stupid question.
But
it's
it has a stupid answer.
Here we go.
Okay. The TLDR, by the way, Anvil's got S tier on both chats.
Did they?
They did. They
Wow.
did. They got S. It was close though. It was very close. Twitch was 50% S, 33A, 17B. YouTube was 36% S, 32% B, 25% A. Y'all were pretty split all over the place on that one.
Yeah.
But okay, we'll get back to that in a second. So to answer this question, Konstantin Sternkopf, is that after the mortal world blew up, it basically when a star blows up, it like scatters all of its components around like the universe. So like all the atoms of like iron and like all the various materials that make up a star go like woo, and then they eventually, due to gravity, will coalesce, and like that's how we get planets, right? That kind of is what happened, but with magic. So when the Warhammer world exploded, it basically like shattered into various physical components, but mostly magical or magical resonating components. And then over the course of an unknown amount of time, all of those various magical things gathered up. So you had like all the things that resonated with Akshi, the Wind of Fire, were drawn together and they formed the Realm of Akshi. All the things that resonated with Azir, the Wind of Heavens, were drawn together and they formed Azir, the Realm of Heavens, etc. And so it formed kind of like 8 pseudo planets. They're actually much, much, much bigger than the vast majority of planets, but they're more like planes because they're flat. They're not globes. They're flat planes. And they eventually coalesced into like regular terrain. and that's the very, very basic TLDR. It would be a very long.
You got a bunch of realms that are kind of flat, and you can jump from one to the next through gates. And yes, they walk on the ground.
Yes, there you
go. They also fly, and they sometimes go between the realms. Woo!
Yep. And there's also pocket dimensions and pocket realms.
And exactly. I mean, the Warhammer world's got all these things too, as well. They basically took everything in the Warhammer world and just spread them everywhere.
Yeah. Dopey Dumbo, double dip. Can Spirit Torment / Morticians, etc., snatch a Stormcast before they get away? Do you ever get a Mortician's POV on Sigmar's handiwork, as they seem to be in similar lines of work? OBR, my beloved. So the answer to this is yes. Stormcast Eternals, they're immortal, but their immortality is like very loose and in quotation marks. There are many different things in the mortal realms that are capable of snatching a Stormcast Eternal's soul and like capturing it or doing something with it. To the point that there are ogres, like just regular basic bitch ogres, who have been known to like reach out and grab and eat a Stormcast soul as it's trying to escape. There's like an entire tribe that revolves around that as a gimmick. But the Night Haunt and the OBR do have the ability, if they have the ability to capture souls, they can capture Stormcast souls. That's arguably what some of them were made to do. So like the Spirit Torments of the Night Haunt, they were designed to capture Stormcast Eternal souls. Is there a story that gives us their POV? I want to say the Soul Wars novel talks a bit about this. I don't know if there's an OBR novel that breaks down how the OBR feel about the Stormcast. I'm sure there is, but I'm struggling to call it to mind. It might be in one of the short story collections, because one of the things I like about Age of Sigmar is that there's actually a number of these really thick books that just have like a ton of short stories in them from like all sorts of different faction perspectives. So I'd maybe recommend looking into those, like Myths and Legends. I don't remember the names of all of them, but you can find them pretty easily on the website. All right,
we need to speed up.
Next, Andy?
Up next is, oh gosh, I've lost track of where I am. Let's bring it back up on screen. Up next is, it's the Astral Templars. Of course it is. The Astral Templars. I like these ones.
The Astral...
Wait. Before we do, what do we think of them being a bullshit? That's what I say to that. They are the most...
Hey, you mean S?
No, worse, they're S. I call them bullshit in this one. They are not S tier. They are walking, talking stereotypes. Whoever wrote them ran out of imagination that day and just copy-pasted everything that they Googled up about death things, and they just pasted it in. There is nothing here that feels original. When I first read it, I went, really? These are what? And they don't really do anything with it. They just continue on diving deeper and deeper into their stereotype rather than doing something super cool with it. So I feel that these are a really average to not very good group, and I would have easily dropped that one all the way down at C.
So, welcome to Lorebeards. I'm going to say Andy's just a big old grump, and I love the Anvils of the Helm.
Nope.
They are by far my favorite Stormhost. They have the best color scheme. They have my favorite characters. Their novels are my favorite of all of the Stormhosts, and I adore them. They are easy S tier for me because they're my favorite by far.
Easy C tier because they're so unimaginative and derivative, and there's not an original bone.
Books, except for maybe one that I'm not going to say which one. There's one that might arguably have better ones.
I'm cool with them having good stories, but that doesn't mean the idea is good, though.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I don't care about the idea. I don't know.
And for all you saying, I'm just saying that because Gelt's in there. No, you can't prove anything.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
You know what? I believed you until you said the second part. Then I was like, hold on.
No, but seriously, I'm not just saying it because of that. When I read them, I was like, there's nothing here other than they're going to take a basic bitch stereotype and then take, hopefully, it in a good direction with later stories, which apparently they have. But that in no way means that I think they're a good idea.
So accurate.
Yeah.
OGW became a multi-billion company with Space Marines. They're not going to stop now.
You're so not wrong. It's just I wish they'd done something more with it, because one of the strengths of 40k is they took all of those stereotypes that were created and they turned them into something better. And the stories that I read about this group hadn't turned them into something that unique or interesting or better yet. If anything, it just dialed harder into the stereotype, leaving me a bit cold.
But it's time for the Astral Templars.
Templars.
So these guys are a decent bit shorter than the other two. They don't have as much content, but
yeah, they're only like 6 foot tall.
Yeah, what they do have is kind of spicy. So the Astral Templars, also known as the Beast Slayers. So these guys have a crazy color scheme, but the Astral Templars are basically the barbarians among the Stormhosts. They were all noted to be these really savage war tribes that were often found in Gur, but lived all over the realms, which is worth noting that many of the Stormcast Eternals were gathered up in different eras of what's known as the Age of Chaos, which lasted for 500 years. The Astral Templars were gathered up very late in that particular era, and they came from a lot of the human tribes that had not fallen to chaos, or at least claimed had not fallen to chaos. And they were noted for having to be very shall we say tribal to survive a world where chaos reigned supreme and civilization had collapsed in the vast majority of the realms. They have held on to a lot of that heritage, and these guys are very much they hold on to their past and their traditions with a lot of fervor. They are by far the most polytheistic storm host in existence, because many of them worship totemic beasts, or they worship the god beasts, which god beasts are, just think of them as the god-like progenitors of the various creatures and monsters of AoS, is the really easy way to think about it. They're basically, if you want to get really nitpicky about it, they're Norskins.
Yeah, that's basically what they are. It's like, can we put the Space Wolves in? Yes, we can. Here they are. Here's our version of the Space Wolves. Have them ride chariots and kill beasts and stuff. Yeah, that's what they do. Woo!
Except, to be fair, they're better than the Space Wolves, because they're allowed to have a really interesting religion that revolves around a lot of different creatures. And Sigmar, they like Sigmar, but he's not as important to them as.
Okay, I would just say, you say better than Space Wolves. I say, look at that armor.
Oh yeah, I hate their color scheme. I will say, I hate their color scheme. Their color scheme is awful. You have they have a lot of stuff that revolves around various different kinds of god beasts. They have a lot of notable special characters. I'm pretty sure these are the guys that have Hamilcar. I think. Hamilcar, I always blank on his Stormhost, but they have they are very much the monster hunters. So if you are dealing with various monsters, they are Hamilcars. Okay, thank God. I was gonna be they're gonna laugh me out of the room if I got that wrong. Hamilcar is admittedly probably one of the most beloved Stormcast characters in all of Age of Sigmar, because he has a very, very, very well regarded model or novel. And they get up to some pretty interesting antics, especially early on in the Realm Gate Wars, where the major thing that the Astral Templars became known for, with following Hamilcar's storyline, is that these guys actually became pretty buddy-buddy with the Auric war clans, where they, because of the way they engage in battle, and that they love it. They love, they're very much that stereotype of the barbarian savages, where they like fighting and drinking and hanging out with animals. And they forged a pseudo alliance with the Oryx, or the Orcs, if we're using the fantasy term, of Gur, and actually played a significant role in loosening Chaos's hold over there. And they are what allows these Stormcast Eternals to actually treat with some of the quote unquote destruction factions, which sadly, this is something that kind of got left behind in the later editions, where the later editions wanted like the 4 core factions of like death, destruction, order, and chaos to no longer hang out. But early on, the Astral Templars were the best tool that the factions of order had for brokering alliances and working together with forces that normally you wouldn't think about, because first edition relied very heavily on the idea that chaos was in a very ascendant position, so everyone else worked together against them. So you had stuff like the Anvils of the Heldenhammer working together with vampires, and you had the Astral Templars fighting side by side with Oryx and stuff, because it was that or the fucking highway. But the Astral Templars, they're also very heavily associated with Yndrasta, who was the major character that was released with 3rd edition, who is a very kick-ass miniature. But she's this lady with like these big angel wings and this big spear that goes around killing like really big bad monsters and such. And they're basically your ass-kicking monster hunters that also rather uniquely, like their kind of unique flavor is that unlike most of the other Stormcast Eternals that tend to be very have a very dour outlook on their immortality, the Astral Templars revel in it, which is probably their most unique feature.
Yeah, these guys are basically, have you ever played Monster Hunter? Yeah, there we go. We're off. They're your monster hunting, tattoo wearing, pelt adorned Stormcast Eternals. They're wandering around doing tribal stuff because, hey, that's who they are. Again, we are diving deep into stereotype. Do they break free from that stereotype much? Not really. But it does give them a lot of character. This is the Gur-facing group, so that's the Wind of Beasts.
God, I wish they'd given them amber armor instead. They would have looked so
made
much
more
better.
Sense. I couldn't bring the other picture up for too long. This one's a little bit more
that color scheme is
acceptable.
So fucking awful.
Yeah, and it also speaks in no way towards who they are and what they do. The color scheme is just bobbins. They are, however, the barbarian groups of the Stormcast Eternals, and if you like your barbarians, these are the ones that you should vote for. They're the ones that have a barbarian attitude, and thus they have that sort of lust for life that's somewhat missing in many of the others who tend to be dour and very religious individuals. In terms of their religiosity, they are much more down on the great god beast, so worshipping all the basic primeval animal avatars and what they represent in Age of Sigmar. So there you go. That's these guys, the Astral Templars. They're not from the stars, as Astral would suggest, nor are they really Templars. The gods alone know why they chose Astral Templar for their names, but they are indeed the Astral Templars.
Technically, like they get sent down from Azir, so they come out of the sky.
And the god beasts are often shown up being in the stars or something similar, right? Yeah.
A couple of them.
Yeah, that's super weak. Yeah, I'm really trying to push it here. It's super weak.
They toned down the color. Like Hamilcar on his art, that is so much better. They toned down the color.
Yeah, that's a bit better. That's better.
Great. I don't
I think that's a better depiction as well of the general idea of the pelts that they wear and the space wolfiness of them all.
Yeah, totally not Space Wolves the chapter.
No. Definitely not in the slightest.
All right, polls are up.
Let's jump through a bunch of super chats.
Yeah, for this one, I did do A, B, C, D, just because these guys don't really have that much printed material.
No, that seems fair.
Like they do have Hamilcar, which is cool, but I don't think he carries them all the way up to that. To S tier. Garrett, have you heard the anime Sentenced to be a Hero? Similar concept. People sentenced of the worst crimes are cursed to being an immortal soldier with quote unquote or with ... consequences when dying this time. Oh, I've never heard that.
I've not heard that one either. I'm going to have to go check it out. Sentenced to be Hero. I'm going to go check that out. I watched too much anime already.
Pumpkin King Jack, thank you so much for the super chat.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Frederick Trader, if it helps anyone, the Hammers of Sigmar remind me of the Ordinator/Buoyant Armigers rather than the Ultramarines of 40,000. I don't know what those are, but cool.
Sure. Thanks, Frederick Trader.
Archmage Eldred, Hammers show both the greatest and lowest parts of the nature of Stormcast. Now they do, yes.
They didn't used to, though.
Yeah. Stephen Lucas, like in second edition, Soul Wars, a major theme was that about everyone except destruction used and recycle souls as an important resource, like bishops. Yes, soul recycling is a core concept of Age of Sigmar. I would agree.
It is, and in many respects, it completely diminishes all of the great sacrifices of Warhammer. Because Warhammer is all about that great struggle against chaos, and then chaos taking souls, and they're being corrupted and gone forever, and it's horrific. And now, yeah, he's back, that one's back too. All of the great horror of what was before, completely erased, as it's just this big soul battery recycling process.
Valmora, howdy, Andy and Sotek. I hope you're both doing well. Painting my Annihilators while listening to the stream.
Nice.
No Astro Templars. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people who they are their favorite Stormhosts. Mostly
not surprised. Yeah. And vote it A, I suppose.
Josina Quitian, think they'll ever make Boris Ursus into a Stormcast Eternal? I doubt it, but if they did, he would absolutely be an Astral Templar because their favorite god beast is literally just Ursus.
The bear.
It's a bear god.
Yeah. Ursrich. Is it Ursrich?
Yeah, it's Ursrich.
Ursrich. Yeah.
Totally not Urson. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm totally half remembering most of this.
It's even literally a giant white bear that can shapeshift into the form of a man, and he's like a really big dude. It's Urson. Luigi Super, I refuse to believe it. Karl Franz is intact as Lord Celestin. He has never died, is perfect, and will kill chaos. Karl Franz is my idol.
Yours alone.
Someone needs to call the local asylum. They're missing an inmate. Skatari Boy, which Stormhost has the members with the best abs for grating cheese on? You know? Maybe the Astral Templars. I mean, they got barbarians and they do a lot of monster hunt. I mean, look at the abs on good old Hamilcar. You can see them chiseled out in his armor.
Yeah, I might go with the Anvils of Heldenhammer just because their abs are going to be much more, bony as well. I mean, that's going to be pretty good for grating on.
Yeah, that's true. If you want the best grating experience,
let's go with the Anvils.
I never thought of it that way, Andy. All right, and that is time. And on both chats, we have a winner of B tier in both chats.
Alrighty, well, let's bring the. Oh, you need to remove that image first.
Oh wait, no, sorry. It was B tier on. It was B tier on Twitch, but A tier on YouTube.
Oh, interesting.
But it was.
How close? A 20 B 40. Okay, now given that, I'd probably put it A then.
Yes, I agree. So who are they up there with? Is it the Hammers?
The Hammers of Sigmar and the Astral Templars together. And who do you think should be higher, the Hammers or the Astral Templars?
In my opinion, definitely Hammers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, pretty strongly agree.
I think when they were initially all introduced together in first edition, I think the Astral Templars were one of the best Stormhosts because they had a lot of unique flavor, and they also introduced the concept of the polytheism in first edition, later first edition, and their antics in Gur made them way cooler than pretty much any of the other Stormhosts. But as the editions have carried on, they kind of got left behind, other than their special characters. Their characters like Hamilcar and Drosta and stuff are super fucking cool. But the Stormhost itself got really put on the back burner, and they didn't develop at all, really.
Yeah, so as someone who's just read about them pretty much over the course of the last couple of days or so, and tried to absorb as much information as he can, I found them dull. And I found them dull because there was, again, nothing new here. At least the Hammers of Sigmar were telling the story of the Stormcasts. This was saying, and we've got Space Wolves, Norska, barbarian killer people, And again, it laps so heavily into stereotype without doing anything new with it, without saying, this is what you might expect from the stereotype, but they're actually like this. It doesn't take many words to do this. A single paragraph can tell 1,000 stories, and it doesn't. Yep. So I found them a bit dull.
Yeah, I would have personally probably put them in C or D tier.
Yeah, I kind of can't help but think the same thing as well. It's just not that characterful. The armor is not good. The descriptions is not great. Yeah, so for me, this is an easy, again, CD. I totally understand. Fans will easily drop them up further because they'll have the favorite things that they did.
Yeah, I will say, like their Realmgate saga, those like 2 or 3 books where they're dealing with Gordrak and like Hamilcar's book, ace. Absolutely.
Yeah, there we go. So I missed out on that. So I don't have those cool stories to draw upon. All I've got is the broad brushstrokes that they've used.
Yeah, Angel, I agree. They have a lot of just unused potential.
Yeah,
they're just kind of there.
That's my problem. And that unused potential has been realized with the Hammers of Sigmar. They got a good go of it, where the others so far just haven't. Anyway, will we go on to the Celestial Vindicators?
Yeah, before that, I'm going to grab, let's say, 2 more super chats.
Sounds good to me.
Archmage Eldred, gotta go to sleep before work, but glad to see only the fantasy callback that Andy would prefer not to see. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, did we have to? Apparently so.
And then Carl Franz, Empire of Man. Oh, how you doing? Reichsguard to S tier. All right, where does that take us to?
The Celestial Vindicators.
Celestial Vindicators. Okay, so now we start to get. Now we're about to get a little spicy. So the Celestial Vindicators are often known as the Vengeance Incarnate chapter. The Celestial Vindicators started off as they were initially known to be a Stormhost that was formed around people that just really, really fucking hated chaos. Like, absolutely despised it, to the point that the thing that tied them together initially as the 6th Stormhost that was ever formed was that they were those that, as mortals, right before Sigmar sapped them up to become reforged, they were all individuals who were not praying for salvation or protection or any of that. They simply prayed to anything that would listen to them for the power to kill the people in front of them, which were the invading horse of chaos. They are those that, in a different tale, if Sigmar hadn't zapped them up, likely would have fallen to chaos.
Yeah, fallen to corn.
If left to their own devices long enough. They are a very destructive force that want to go out and just beat the shit out of whoever gets in their way, and they are incredibly aggressive. They're very obsessed with hatred. They're very obsessed with trying to unleash their power in the most extreme, to the point that they believe in unrestrained force of arms. This can make things a little difficult for Sigmar and his grand designs at times, because they tend to pass through areas like an absolute storm and tend to absolutely wreck the fuck out of wherever they're attacking, that to the point where their allies are kind of like, ugh, like, oh my god, okay, these guys are a little nuts. However, they the scary thing about them is that they had one of the fastest story developments of that. Initially, they already hated chaos, but the only thing that kind of held them in check, and the thing that sort of kept them, you could argue, on the right path, was their Lord Celestant. Which their Lord Celestant, when they first emerged into the realms and were fighting against chaos, was Thostis Bladestorm. And Thostis was a very, very, honestly, a really fun, well-written character. He was very level-headed. He knew how to control the hatred of his chamber and keep them very focused on the objective. He played a key role, and he was the one that found Galmaraz, and ended up playing a key role in defeating Tzeentch's schemes in Shaman. But Thostis met a terrible fate, which is that he was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first Stormcast we saw permanently killed. Except for he wasn't killed, it was worse than that, which is that Thostis fought Archaon one-on-one at the end of the Realmgate saga over in Shaman. And he goes up against Archaon, and Archaon butchers him. There's like a whole bunch of setup leading up to this duel, showing what a badass Thostis is and how awesome he is. And he finally goes up against Archaon, and he gets torn apart like a child going up against a raptor. And Archaon, of course, is riding on Dorger, the steed of the apocalypse, and Dorger has the ability to basically devour the essence of people killed in front of them, their souls, yada yada, and they become a part of Dorger permanently. So Dorger devours Thostus, and his essence is basically trapped being tortured for eternity within the guts of the steed of the apocalypse. And if memory serves, one of Dorger's, like, one of his, like, claws or something turns silver because literally Thostus becomes a part of it. After Thostus dies, this is when Ortus Drakehewer takes over as the Lord Celestant. And what little control Thostus was able to keep, the reins that he held onto his Stormhost, Ortus doesn't bother. And so the Celestial Vindicators are basically a group that care more about killing the enemy than anything else. And so they don't really care that much about the allies they're supposed to be forging in Sigmar's name. So, like, to the point where there are rumors about them, totally just rumors, that they have been fighting alongside allies like elves, dwarven, or humans, or even other storm casts. And when they get lost in their battle lust, they end up killing the people they're supposed to be defending. And they are a bit uniquely odd of the various Stormhosts. Many of them look at the reforging process and losing themselves over the course of the reforging process to the likes, to like losing their memories and stuff and becoming more automaton-like. Most of them view it as a negative, like a horrible thing. They're losing their humanity. The Celestial Vindicators look forward to it. They almost revere it so that they can leave behind what they perceive as weaknesses and become living weapons. Though they don't admit this openly. This is like a very, very like big hush-hush secret within their Stormhost that they refuse to admit to. These guys are fanatical lunatics.
Yeah. These guys are a little more interesting because they're not just taking one of the Space Marine chapters and repurposing it, although they do have a good chunk of a bit of, Black Templars. They've got a little bit over on the other side of some of the more extreme Blood Angels. They've got a little bit of all of them, but that in some respects makes it better. The core of them is what would happen for those who were reforged out of those who were about to fall to chaos. And the answer is these crazy motherfuckers. And that is interesting because we're now actually looking at, out of all the ones we've had so far, the first group that are what they are because of the nature of their forging the souls are coming from and because of the lore that they've built. And they've then said, if we built this lore, what would happen if Sigmar reaches in and zaps out those that are about to fall, those that hate chaos with such intensity that they will continue that fight forever. And now they can because they're made eternal. And that's what we're given here with this group. They are crazy motherfuckers, and that's kind of cool. They are not just a copy-paste of something from 40k or something from the real world. Although they take elements, I can't dispute that. They take elements from several places. They are nevertheless something that is almost their own. And when I first read them, I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. If we've got our Ultramarines as our base standard template, which we've gone through already, our hammers, and we've got these other groups that are basically using the different winds of magic in different ways, and they are so heavily stereotyped on the Gur side, for example, or the Shyish side. They're the two others that we've discussed so far. These groups are drawing upon just the very nature of the story of what created them. And that's kind of fun. There is a little bit more here. When I read it, it felt like there's a bit more meat on the bone.
Yeah, okay. Let's go into the next poll. What do you think? SABC or ABCD?
I think an SECD. Okay, because there's not a great deal about them. I can see some people not being that happy with them. While simultaneously, there is quite a lot of cool in there as well. I can see some people really liking them. So let's go with an SACD, and this is for the Celestial Vindicators, the embodiment of hatred that are, as a group, killing motherfuckers. They are pretty mean.
Yeah, they're effective. I mean,
yeah,
they are a useful tool. And the thing that I actually find quite interesting about them is that Sigmar knows what they're up to.
There's one other fact that I thought was bullshit that I do think is worth bringing up about them. I'm pretty sure it's these ones anyway. I'm going to go double check to make sure that I'm not wrong. These are the ones that worship the rune fangs, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, they do.
Oh man! Oh, when I read that, I was like, seriously, that's what you did with the rune fangs,
yeah,
man.
That part, I was like,
Father of Blades.
I'm not going to bother with that because it's a.
No, you got to mention it, okay? Because those of us who love our Warhammer lore, we've got to bring this up. They worship the Father of Blades. What's the Father of the Blades? That's the rune fangs from the world that was all forged together into one Swordman, and Swordman should be worshipped because Swordman is awesome. The rune fangs are one of their gods, the Father of Blades, and that was enough for me to go, well, they tried. I think in this case they may have failed, but they tried. The Father of Blades, an avatar of justice.
Yeah, it's to be fair, I do like that they don't see the rune fangs as like the ultimate, like they're like, yes, it's like the ultimate noble hero. They worship it for its impassivity. They're like, yes, it's the heartless weapons of Sigmar. It's like, man, you guys need therapy.
They need therapy. Yeah, totally.
Anyway. Getting caught up on some super chat stuff here. Boop. Dopey Dumbo, Gorka Morda. Ah, yes, my favorite god.
Gorka Morda.
Stephen Lucas, this your $5 super chat. So no, we got it. We were just very behind.
Yeah, we were going slow, Stephen Lucas. We are catching up though.
The Wrestling Theater sounds like they would be Ulrich's boys talking about the Astro Templars. Yep, very much so. Yep. Bowfoot, Andy, they aren't well developed away from stereotypes. Fair, but Age of Sigmar gets 0.5 of a Black Library book for every 5 Space Marine books. PSL is pumpkin spice latte. Is it?
That's good to know, but I am going to argue this corner slightly, Biofoot, because you don't need to have a lot of space to create interesting, unique, and fascinating background material for all of these groups. Indeed, a couple of paragraphs can often do the job, where you get, yes, the stereotypes that may be being used, but also how they're different from the stereotype. What makes them unique? What makes them fascinating? But instead of doing that, most of the descriptions here do the opposite. They go, here's the stereotype, and this is how they dive into it even deeper, because we haven't had any original thoughts for how to use these things. Having said that, though, the Celestial Vindicators are, out of the ones we've had a look at so far, one of the more original.
You know, if they were going to worship a sword, I wish you could tell this is a first edition thing. Because it's like, if you were going to have them worship a sword from fantasy, why are they worshiping the Sword of Justice?
Yeah, the Sword of
Justice,
Justice,
the Lord of Shadow, and then they could have been a Shadow Stormcast of Olgu, and it would have been like a whole thing.
Yeah, you could have done a whole cool story with it. Yeah, it's just not great.
Yep, and that is
me over on Twitch.
Time.
What is it on YouTube?
It is A 36%, S 31%, B 26%.
We've got ourselves a clear A then. So where would you put the Celestial Vindicators? Above, behind, or below the Astral Templars and the Hammers of Sigmar?
I think I would put them above the Astral Templars, but below the Hammers.
Yeah, I think that's fair. My opinion on them vacillates the more that I hear about each of them, and the more that I get to compare and contrast them. But I feel that they're somewhat less stereotype than the Astral Templars, which is a good thing. But I fear they are significantly less setting defining than the Hammers of Sigmar, which define what it is. And there's loads of cool, unique ideas that the Stormcast represent. But in many respects, the cool, unique ideas they represent are really owned by the ones that are used to show that, which is the Hammers of Sigmar. Then we get to look at all the others, and so far, they've mostly been, and they're just Space Marine chapters who are like the Hammers of Sigmar. So if you were, for example, a Space Wolf, but you were actually a Hammer of Sigmar, you would be an Astral Templar. And there's very little thought beyond that. At least with the Celestial Vindicators, there's a bit more. So I think, yes, they sit a little bit ahead.
Yeah.
Right, where are we going next?
I personally probably would have tucked them in B, I think.
Oh, I didn't say where I put them. Yeah, solid B. Very solid B, I think.
I think they're a good B.
Yeah, I think so too. A good, solid B. Okay, next is the Celestial Warbringers. The Celestial Warbringers.
Yeah. Okay, so the Celestial Warbringers are these guys are a bit of a unique group. So the Warbringers are the prophets or the seers of the noted Stormhosts. So they were the very, very first Stormhosts of the second striking, which the strikings are like the various, like the collections of Stormhosts that get made. They have the most of the Sacrosanct Chamber by a lot, being that they have like the most wizards and like celestial portents, because the Stormcast, because they come from Azir as like a faction, they tend to have a lot of Azir gimmicks. So whether it's like lightning or storms, but in their case, it's the portent aspect. It's the seeing the future. And you have this whole gimmick for them around that. They all have the ability, every single one of them, even the ones that are not full-on wizards or whatever, they are said to be able to foresee the manner of their own death. So they know how they're going to die every single time they're reforged, according to rumor and myth and such. And the thing that they did with them that was actually a bit interesting as we went into the later editions is that when we were going into second edition, the Celestial Warbringers ended up having a very notable lean into what is known as the Lord Ordinators, which the Lord Ordinators are, to put it simply, they're kind of like they're the warrior engineers. They're the engineers of the Stormhosts. So they're like the mathematicians that are very good at building cities and fortifications and defensive things and tinkering with war machines. And many of the most notable Lord Ordinators actually come from the Celestial Warbringers as a because they just have such a tie-in to traits that make good ones, would be the best way I could put it. The thing that is notably interesting for the Warbringers is that among the various Stormhosts, they are
terribly colored.
Terribly colored, yeah, sure. But they're also, I know this is going to sound weird, but they're kind of like the nepotism Stormhost, in that they're a very small elite Stormhost compared to most. And the thing about them that's unusual is that every single one of them came from the same mortal tribe. So what Sigmar did with them, which is a bit of a unique and interesting, but also kind of a weirdly fucked up story, is that Sigmar basically located a group of mortals who were these great warriors that were very, very good at having mysticism based dreams, portents of their own doom, and going towards their deaths bravely and celebrating going towards their death instead of being afraid for it or trying to avoid it. And instead of like just taking their greatest warriors, instead of just taking the souls of those that have passed on, Sigmar snatches up the entire clan and basically genocides them. Because the Stormcast cannot have kids. They don't have offspring. Sigmar literally wipes out an entire people and turns what there was of them into an elite fighting force that specialize in seeing the future and manipulating, it says, entire nations to try and tilt their decision makings and their destiny in Sigmar's preference. Which is one of those ones where when you look at it initially, you go, oh, that's kind of cool. But then the more you look at it, you go, oh, wait, that's kind of fucked up. That's kind of fucked up. Which is interesting.
Yeah, I find this law interesting for the oddity of the whole thing, because this is the one that when you look at it in black and white is clearly the Azir lot. These are the ones that are using blue magic, looking into the future, tempests, storms, all the rest of it is Azir. Why are they blue? What the hell? What's going on here? I mean, really, what is going on? And when I read it and I looked at them,
Studio loves this obnoxious purple-red color because they did it for these guys and the Astral Templars, and I just don't dig it.
No. These are clearly the blue guys. They're meant to be blue. They are not blue. They are a hideous color. And they are basically just a bunch of seers. They see into the future.
You do not have to be dead to be taken by Sigmar. The vast majority of Stormcast weren't dead. Sigmar steals them before their death, which is like a whole thing.
It's, quite the thing. When I read that little bit, that was actually new to me. I did not know it. And I was like, well, that's a thing. Yeah, Sigmar's just a dick.
The anvils of the Heldenhammer were noted for being completely dead before Sigmar snatches them.
The rest of them, the story as I first read it was just before they died, they are zipped out. In most cases. And then you read more deeply into it and find out that a whole bunch of them never reached the just before they die bit. They're just yanked out. And this is what we have here, a whole bunch of them for a weird story. And that story is apparently the people that form the basis of this group of Stormcast are the best ever anywhere, and thus he took them all, regardless of whether they wanted to be taken or not. And I find the story just a bit weird, but that's probably good because you could build a really cool story out of that. I can't say that I've seen that story hit. There may be a book that makes it nice and clear, but in the stuff that I read, I didn't read a story that made me go, oh yeah, I can totally see why he took those dudes. Holy shit. Instead, it's just, they did this because it's a thing that happened. And that's pretty much all I've got.
These guys were a Chekhov's gun that were set up but never fired. Is
that the best could be the issue then. Yeah. So this for me felt like an entire group of almost there guys, as in the armor color was wrong. For the tone and the fact it's Warhammer. Warhammer, if you're doing all the portent futury stuff, they should be in blue, surely. And it's just wrong. Look at them. Dudes, they look wrong. The story they have just didn't seem to have a payoff. It was just, here's your story. What does it mean? I don't know. It's just a story. But why? I don't know. Doesn't that make Sigmar look really bad? Yeah, just don't look at it too much, okay? Sigmar's a good guy. And the whole thing just left me going, there's definitely something more here. What is it? Particularly given, I mean, they're the Azir guys. It feels like there's something missing here.
Yeah, if they had like really leaned into, honestly, these guys, there's like 2 or 3 very specific conflicts they should have been at that would have actually made them a very, very cool group of characters. But these guys sort of get made and then they sort of get dropped off and never picked up from the daycare.
So yeah, I don't know what else I can say about them because I couldn't find an enormous amount. And I tried.
It's interesting that they have stuck for a good number of Stormcast fans, and in the army books, they've stuck around as being like one of the like suggested Stormhosts. When they have a very interesting setup, but they just kind of their information just kind of gets repeated, and then nothing gets done with it.
Yeah, I quite like the aspect of them that they were almost like. I mean, basically the Azir lot. I mean, that's what it boiled down to. And for those of you who know your Warhammer lore, that means that they're using the portent side of the blue wind of magic. And they're dialing into that hard with lightning bolts attached on the side.
Yeah, like they are genuinely, like when you look at them, of all the Stormhosts we've talked about, if we were to assign each of them to like one of the winds, these guys are undeniably the Azir group.
Yep, undeniably.
Like they're this very weird, aloof, magically charged group of seers.
Yeah, pretty much. Anyway, let's bring up the.
Pulls her up.
Excellent. Let's get some more super chats out of the way so we don't fall behind.
Yeah, Agent 2 Bry, Astral Templars represent Great Sigmar the Barbarian. Yes, that is how I remember. There's a quote in the Rome Gate Wars where one of them talks about that. But yes. Ricky Chapman, you didn't mention when Hamilcar punched Sigmar in the face and gambled all his possessions, losing to a greenskin, then killed him and got it back. Yeah, so
holy crap.
The thing I'm trying to avoid doing for this poll is be like, we're gonna do a tier list of the Stormcast special characters, because that would be its own thing. And I'm trying really hard not to do that. Like, I'm mentioning the characters, but trying not to get super deep into them. Hamilcar is a genuinely very cool character. Hamilcar does have an interesting confrontation with Sigmar, where he ends up hitting the god Sigmar. And there's a reason a lot of people really like Hamilcar, but I'm trying not to make the Astro Templars into just Hamilcar.
Yeah.
Is the best way I could say that. Start with the Great Horned Rat. Celestial Vindicators are S+++. Love my broken, burning, vengeance-bound reapers of all things corrupt. And that works.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Angel 2 Prize, Celestial Vindicators, the Vengeance Paladins of Age of Sigmar. Yeah, that is very
That seems fair.
And Karl Franz, Empire of Man. I refuse to believe in the Lord Celestant. I won't go anywhere without my beloved baby boy Deathclaw. I think you mean the Celestant Prime. The Lord Celestants are the little yeah. Also, I want to say this because I've seen a lot of people saying this in chat, and I just want to clarify. I'm aware that the term Lord Celestant does not mean what it used to mean, but that's a fairly recent update to the lore for Age of Sigmar, where it used to be that the big bosses in charge of not the entire Stormhosts, but if you were okay, who's the big guys of the Hammers of Sigmar? You talk about the Lord Celestants. There were multiples of them, but they were the big bads. And you'd usually only get to see one of them, maybe two or three, but usually you'd only be dealing with one of them. Eventually in 4th edition, or was it 3rd edition? I want to say it's 3rd edition when we got the Lord Commanders, where the Lord Commanders are the actual big guys in charge, but we only know one of them, which is the Bastion Cathalos of the Hammers of Sigmar, who is a gorgeous model, by the way. And I remember that was a super big deal. And I was impressed by Games Workshop when he actually got released, because man, there was a hubbub in certain parts of the Warhammer observing community that the first revealed lore commander was a black guy, and there were some people that fucking hated that. He is Oh yeah, it was a whole thing.
What's wrong with people? Why? Why do they hate that?
Fans. I want to be clear. I don't think it was Age of Sigmar fans. It was people reacting to the reveal. But his model is gorgeous, and he is such a badass character.
Yeah, it's a cool miniature. I remember it.
Is a super cool character. He's awesome. Love him to death.
Fucking hell. People.
But anyway. So I'm not worrying about the Lord Commanders, because he's the only one I know of. I don't think I've ever heard of another one. All right, from there, polls are up or done. So we had on Twitch, also Bloom Bull. Thank you so much for gifting a sub to Castrated.
Oh, thank you.
That was very kind of you. Thank you so much. Oh gosh, I got all these. Raccoon Coon. That's a very funny name. Thank you very much for giving a sub to Sioner. Thank you very much for the support on that. So sorry I didn't see that till just now, because that doesn't show up on our other thing. So thank you. I did catch it. So we had for the Celestial Warbringers, Twitch went 50% B. Is this for... Wait, is that for the Celestial Warbringers, or was that for the other guys? That might be old data. Yeah, no, I think it was different, because the poll's up. No, it was... I think it was C1 over on Twitch.
And what was it on YouTube?
C as well.
C as well. There we go. Celestial Warbringers at a C. I mean, it feels fair, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think C is decent. I don't think they're incredibly super boring. I think that they are. I think they have a very solid foundation. I wish more was done with them, which to me screams.
Yeah, I agree. They're a pretty basic idea that has not been developed. And that seems to be it. They've got a really cool little potential story there about them all being drawn from one people. Does that actually get any meat to its bones? Not really. So we're not really left with anything that gives you oh, that's so cool. Instead, you're just left with questions that are unanswered.
Yeah. All right. Where are we off to next?
Are we on to the Hallowed Knights? Yeah, the Hallowed Knights. Excellent.
Yep. The Hallowed Knights.
Only the faithful.
Only the faithful. So the Hallowed Knights were introduced. They were the second major Stormhost that we were introduced to in Age of Sigmar, as they were the big boys in the Gairan, or the Realm of Life campaign during the Realmgate Wars saga. And they were running off doing that stuff while the Hammers of Sigmar were mostly over in Akshi, and then we had like the Astral Templars over in Gur, and we had the we had Thostis's boys over in Shaman, and et cetera, et cetera. So the Hallowed Knights are basically, they are the monotheistic Stormhost. They worship Sigmar, and they are extremely zealous. They are crazy zealous. They were the fourth Stormhost to be overall founded, and they're crusaders. They see the fight against chaos as a sacred mission that they have been taken up into. They are very big into ritual, prayer, hymns, worship, to the point that Sigmar is genuinely made uncomfortable by them at times. Like Sigmar is like a little like, you guys need to chill. They are they are kind of the Boy Scouts, to put it bluntly, of the Stormcast Eternals, where they are very, very much they will jump at the chance to fight any foe, very much fighting for honor and justice and stuff. And they have had a ton of Black Library novels. Like, they have had a silly amount of Black Library novels. Their most famous character by far is, of course, one of the most beloved characters in the entirety of the Stormcast Eternals, which is Gardas Steelsoul. Gardas has been around since first edition and is frankly a really, really fun character. I'm not going to overly focus on him, but that man has been through some horrible shit and just kind of keeps powering on. To the point, but he's written in a way, he is very interesting in that he's very, very faithful in Sigmar, but he still questions Sigmar a lot. Many of the people that became the Hallowed Knights were often healers in life. So many of them were actually not warriors in their mortal lives. They were people that took care of other people. So they were like nurses or healers or sages, but they were often non-combatants. And this will often lead to that. It's suggested that this is why they are considered the most empathetic of the Stormhosts. They are often the easier to get along with for normal humans and tend to care the most about normal humans. But this has also resulted in that many of them get sent into like the absolute worst shit, to the point that this is, of course, the Stormhost that had the, I'm gonna say, very infamous novel where they went into Nurgle's garden itself and they had like a big old romp through the Garden of Nurgle, and that story quite literally ends with them not only escaping from Nurgle's domain, but unleashing enough of a blast that the god Nurgle himself cries out in pain. They managed to basically punch Nurgle in the face, which is crazy. And I hated that book because of that last scene. Up until that, it was fine. But like, oh my god, I hate that scene so much. That was so dumb. But that book aside, which I think is a very infamous book, these guys have received a rather significant amount of focus because their faith, the authors have used it to allow them to explore their relationship with Sigmar in some interesting ways. Of that, these are the guys who very much debate, and some of Gardas Steelsoul actually gets like a little scene with Sigmar, of them often debating with if what Sigmar did was justified, of that should Sigmar have stolen them away from their mortal lives, because the moment he took them out, it prevented them from being able to do more at that moment. So the people that were relying on them as healers died because they were no longer there. The people that they were protecting died because they were no longer there. And many of them wrestle with the idea of, if Sigmar hadn't taken me, maybe I could have made a difference. And it's a very long stretching storyline for them, that some of them have remained extreme. Like they lean down very much in their faith, and they're like, yeah, no, Sigmar was right. Sigmar did the right thing. I have complete faith. Some of them don't. Some of them have extreme doubts that they keep very private. And there have been some short stories written about them that are genuinely really fucking tragic, because their faith is their greatest shield. And when it fails them, the consequences tend to be rather dire.
Yeah, I like this group because it's the classic stereotype. And the classic stereotype is those who are faithful and stuff, right? So who are the most faithful? Those who call upon Sigmar or call out for Sigmar's aid in their last moments and are whisked away to then serve more, not in heaven, but down in hell, where they get to keep on hitting people with a giant hammer. Sounds great fun, doesn't it? And yeah, that's these guys, and their faith is front and center as to who they are. That faith acts as not just something that allows them to push deep into the darkest wars and survive the worst magic thrown against them. It also provides them with a shield of faith, quite literally. So even when they're recast, they often hold on to themselves much better than others. And that's pretty cool. There's a lovely story here for the entire group. And the inevitable next step is, what happens when your faith is shattered? What happens when you start to question? And that's also covered by them. And that's great too. This is a relatively broad spectrum of ideas that are pretty stereotypical. We've got a flawed god, because Sigmar is not a good guy. He's not a bad guy. Sigmar is a flawed god. And he has taken a whole host of rather questionable choices, one could argue, in his desperation. And some have responded with pure faith to that. That's this group. And what happens when they find out more and their faith begins to be questioned? And that's a cool little story that can be dived into in a variety of ways. And indeed, they have done so. And we get, of course, our almost monotheistic group, the ones who largely focus on Sigmar, but they've got a bunch of others that they sort of focus on, mostly their own number. That'll do. Those who've done very well, and they should be emulated. But yeah, this is your religious group of Sigmarites who go out and hit everything with a hammer. They're good to go. And they've got a bit of complexity to them, but their faith is their strongest shield, and they will charge into anything. And that makes them a core component of the armies of Sigmar. Love it.
Yeah, they do have some funny stuff that comes up. Like, you have a whole thing where, like, Gardas Steelsoul himself is very deeply revered and almost held as, like, a saint by the other Stormcasts, and he fucking hates that. And he even has a mutation where he glows with, like, a celestial, like the light of Azir literally shines through his skin. And he doesn't like it. And the others are like, oh, it's a sign he's holy. And he's like, no, it's a mutation. I hate this. And it's a very funny dynamic. That's actually deeply tragic because Gardas goes through the ringer. Yeah.
Cool. We got our votes up.
Yep. Polls are up. Polls are up.
Polls are up. Where do you want to put those hallowed knights? If you think it's an S, slap it an S. If you think it's a C, slap it in C. If you think it lies somewhere in between, you know what to do. But please do vote. That's what makes these streams so much more fun.
Yep. Thrasun Theater. So which ones of these gonks is gonna defect to Ulrich and Tal when Sigmar bites the bullet by the end of 2026? God, I love Games Workshop shooting themselves. For those unaware of what he's talking about, there is a rumor mill going around right now, which seems very likely. Most people think it's true, myself included, that Games Workshop is kind of intending to blow up Age of Sigmar and remake it into another new setting.
Warhammer World.
Yeah. That it's going to result in, like, Sigmar vanishing, and there's going to be like people that worship Tal as like another major faction. I don't think there's mentions of Ulrich being in it, but I have heard Tal is going to be one of the other major gods, even though he has not been in Age of Sigmar like at all. But at all, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be super weird. Apparently, the Stormcasts are going to turn into something completely different, which I think is sad because I think the Stormcasts have really hit their stride in that they're actually starting to tell some really interesting stories, and I'm not looking forward to them losing all of that character development, but we'll see what happens. Drake's Claw. I love to see your support at AoS. What are your thoughts on the Stormcast ability to be non-human? I love it as it's another main difference. How would you write a Seraphon or Ogre Stormcast, for example? So this is one of those weird ones where I don't believe within like the core literature there is an official statement that there has ever been a non-human Stormcast. Whereas in the Black Library books, they've suggested it. And they've given like that guy acts rather elfy, doesn't he? Wink, wink. But it's something that seems intended for if you want to write up your own Stormcast and say that they were not a human originally, you can get away with it. But it's not like something the core studio is going to play around with. I like it though. I think it adds to the rather potentially. I like the Stormcast as a very potentially sinister narrative of Sigmar snatching people that in a way that is deeply, deeply problematic and terrifying. And the idea that he might start snatching up the souls of like other species, I think adds to that in a very fun way. I would explore it, but in more of like a horror fucked up lens, not necessarily in like isn't this like a cute difference? Like this guy was an ogre originally, so like he eats a lot now that he's a Stormcast. Like he's a guy with a big appetite, because I feel like that's what GW would do. But
I hope not.
tell me I'm wrong, but like I would have fun with it, but I would want to explore what happens when you take a soul that did not live a human experience and into a human shape. I think the answer is horror and suffering, but in a really intriguing way.
Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced it's going to make for a very good set of characters if you don't have a skilled writer.
That's very true.
So you could end up with just some goofiness that would make you go, oh, I kind of wish they hadn't done that.
Is time.
Time! Tell us the response.
So
apparently Twitch. Ooh, it's split.
It's a tie between S and A. YouTube was overwhelmingly S.
Overwhelmingly S for the Hallowed Knights. So let's put them up there. Are the Hallowed Knights better or worse in your eyes than the Ambles of the Heldenhammer?
Objectively, they're better. In
my
I
agree.
Opinion, it's really hard. Like
I think objectively they're better.
Objectively, they're better. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
They are
objectivity, Ryan. Objectivity.
Yeah. Objectively, I think they are the best Stormhost to represent what Stormcast Eternals are. And that they have a lot of great stories. And I will say that Gardas Steel Soul is the best Stormcast Eternal character in the entire setting, bar none. He just is the best character. Gardas made me fall in love with Stormcast Eternals. I'll put it that way.
Yep. It's a cool story. I was looking over it today and I was going, ooh, that's interesting. Ooh, that's interesting. But again, we're not discussing the character stories. We're discussing the overall groups. Right, okay, cool. It's now the Knights Excelsior. Knights Excelsior.
Oh my.
Okay,
the Knights Excelsior. So the Knights Excelsior, which if you're sitting out there going, what the hell are they called Excelsior? It's because I don't remember where the word originally comes from, but I know that they get tied in with the city Excelsis, but I think the city Excelsis is named after them, not the other way around. But the Knights Excelsior are so they're known as the Uncompromising. And the Knights Excelsior are this Stormhosts that they have this like gleaming white armor. And to put it very bluntly, these are the most evil motherfuckers in the entirety of the Stormhosts. They existed in, I want to say, I'm 99% sure they did exist in first edition, but they weren't that interesting in first edition. Second edition was when shit got crazy with them. And it all revolved around, at the very end of first edition, we got a storyline called, it was like Portents of Doom, or Shaishian Portents, I forget what it's called. But we got a bunch of storylines it was all these short stories that was talking about that was building up the rise of Nagash, and Nagash was building up the Black Pyramid 2 Electric Boogaloo, and was about to unleash the Necroquake. And as part of it, we got a bunch of different short stories covering all the different factions and what they were up to now that the Realm Gate Wars had ended, and like we were starting to get the cities of Sigmar were built up. So we had like cities and like civilized groups of like nations and stuff, and a malign portents. That's what it was. Thank you, malign portents. So
Okay, has Ryan stopped or have I stopped?
Really did not like the Stormcast Eternals. I despised them. I wasn't a fan of them. They were Sigmarines, and I wanted nothing to do with them. This led to I stopped.
Yeah, you stopped briefly there. It's okay. It was only for about 4 or 5 seconds. I thought I might have been the one that stopped. I was like, oh no, which one of us has gone into pause mode? Fortunately, it was you, not me.
Yeah, sorry. I fell out of existence for half a second. So the Knights Excelsior. So we got a short story that basically is this village somewhere in the Mortal Realms, where the people there had been dealing with an illness that had like kind of swept through the village. It wasn't a Nurgle plague. It was just a normal illness, but they had been dealing with some other problems. And we get the point of view of a dad and his son within their house in this little village. And basically the village comes under attack in the middle of the night. And it reads like a horror film where like you hear like people screaming and then they're silent suddenly and all this stuff's happening. And something comes up to their front door, and basically the door like explodes inwards, and it's a Stormcast Eternal, and it's one of the Knights Excelsior. And they see him and they're like, oh, thank God, the Stormcasts are here to save us from whatever attack is attacking us. And he looks at them, and it basically at the very end of the story, it swaps to his perspective, this Stormcast. And it gives us his point of view. And this guy is so fucked up because he's been through a lot of reforgings. And he basically looks at these two people and he sees that the kid is recovering from an illness. So like he's past the worst of it. He's got like sniffles and like some snot and stuff. And he looks at this kid and basically comes to the conclusion that that child is tainted. And he walks into the room and just brutally massacres everyone in the house. Yeah. And so this gets very expanded in second edition and a few other stories later, that the Knights Excelsior are very much the black and white chamber of the Stormcast Eternals. They do not believe in nuance, and they are automatons. A lot of them have been through a lot of reforgings, and they even fight like automatons to the point where it's noted that they tend to fight in lockstep, and their movements are like perfected and mirrored, and they are less about individualism and more about a cohesive concept of fighting. And they believe nothing matters so long as evil, quote unquote, is purged. And they have done some horrible shit. They are they have a Stormkeep, which is like one of the big castles that a city will be built around, because the city is then protected by Stormcast. And Excelsis is a really, really big city in the realm of beasts. They have notably purged aspects of Excelsis, like when there are riots because people are starving. or there's not enough like food to go around, or wages, or like there's some kind of issue happening among the populace. Maybe an unpopular tax or decree has come down from the ruling council, and people are protesting. They will go out and murder the protesters. They are brutal, uncaring monsters, frankly, that when they go to war against chaos, they literally will burn the battlefield of life. Like, they will use their lightning and their sorcery to wipe out like the plant life. They will burn trees. They will scorch the grass. They will murder innocent people that are nearby to ensure that the taint of chaos cannot spread. They are cruel. Sadistic isn't probably the right term.
Well, not at all.
Yeah, but they're
cold.
Yeah, they are machines, and they are absolutely monstrous. And I enjoyed their story so much when they finally started getting showcased, because they were such a good example of like people needed to rely on them to survive. Like the city of Excelsis it's a very dangerous city. It's constantly surrounded by like Auric war clans and giants and gargants and stuff trying to fight their way into big monsters. They're needed to protect that city. But the people are fucking terrified of them.
And rightly.
And Sigmar has received complaints. Sigmar, there are notes about that. There have been desires from some of the other Stormhosts that demand that Sigmar censor them. There have been stories of them murdering other Stormcast Eternals. Though that's always put under allegedly, but they've absolutely done it. And Sigmar refuses to do it. He allows them to continue operating, and they are scary motherfuckers. So
what happens when you take a look at Warhammer and say, hey, what if the crazed stereotype of the witch hunter was an entire host of warriors? And that's this. Our Sigmarite witch hunter from Warhammer Fantasy has been made into an entire army. And they cleanse and burn everything in their path. And their entire doctrine is worked around the idea of working for the entire storm. What's it called? Not the Stormhost. Stormhost? I'm going to get my terminology right eventually. The Stormhost. It's always Stormhost first, because that helps them deal with the atrocities that they're going to commit in the name of Sigmar, because they do commit atrocities. They believe that the world is quite literally in black and white, because hell, they kind of see it that way. And that means that they then have to take out everything that falls on the not white side. Or if you prefer to think of them as bad guys, in the not black side. They will take out everything in their path without mercy. And that brings a complexity, because inevitably they then carry their atrocities in their heart. And the whole point of this particular host is that they work psychologically to cleanse themselves of the emotions that this should elicit. They work for the Stormhost. They all work together. They all work in step. They become automatons who will be able to dispense the justice as they perceive it without hesitation. But sometimes that means that they will perpetrate war crimes that others would look at and say, hell, Khorne wouldn't do that. Love it. Love it. And it's also directly tied through to what has often been depicted of as Sigmar in Warhammer. This is taking one of the Sigmarite traits and porting it up. This isn't doing what many would perceive, and indeed I have read multiple times online, many claiming this. Oh, these are just importing over 40k ideas. No, they're not. They're importing Warhammer Sigmar ideas, and they're expanding it into an entire group, an entire faction, and saying, what if the bloodiest, worst examples of Sigmar were actually an entire war host? What happens when they're given command? What happens when they're in control? And the answer is atrocity, but atrocity for what they believe is good reason. It's an interesting place to be.
Yeah, I like that they're not, it's not like they're mustache twirling evil. It's not like they enjoy brutally murdering people. Like the thing that really sells me for them is that they have this dynamic of, if they view you as being on Sigmar's side, they are said to be like the most staunch, reliable allies that will fight back to back with you into the bowels of hell itself.
Yep.
But the millisecond that they view you as tainted, and their expression of tainted is very weird, and very, very, in some ways, surface level, they'll turn on you just as quickly. Yep. Because and it's not personal in their view. It's not like they hate you. It's just that you've been corrupted, and the taint must be purged. It must be burned out. Yep. The fact that like their favorite choice of weapon is the Stormcast weapons that unleash great crackling arcs of lightning that literally burn bodies to ash, so that there's no corruption left. There's no tainted blood spilling. And
there's also nothing for them to have horrific nightmares about.
Yeah.
Because they don't need to see those half-burnt corpses staring at them accusingly. Instead, it's gone. The whole thing works towards their psychology, which I quite liked.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to put the polls up for these guys. So we have the Knights Excelsior.
Knights Excelsior!
All right. Getting caught up here. I was on... Knivel, one of those two. Root Kings, Lorebeards win. What is Root Kings? Is that something I should know?
I don't know what Root King is. Someone's gonna have to tell me. I don't know.
Kings. Root Kings. Wait. Oh, this is a thing from. Are you talking about the? Oh, this is a wow. Okay, this is like a really niche AoS thing apparently.
Well, obviously I won't know it because I've only learned the parts that I need for individual streams.
I read about them at some point, apparently, but I had completely forgotten about it. We will probably talk about them next Sunday because they are a Dwarden group.
Dwarden, yeah. What's that?
Friend or Trader, Loris Grimm should have been revealed to be Eternus. Go, Loris Grimm. Eternus. I'm trying to remember who Eternus is. Remind me who that is. Matthew Adam Steele. I love the Hallowed Knights as bringers of hope. Yes, they do that job well. They do that job well when they do it. Ricky Chapman. Now, which host did Cetra belong to? If memory serves, I want to say Cetra was... Oh my god, I can't remember if he was a Tempest Lord or if he was a...
Really? Oh, it just feels so diminishing.
And it's not actually Cetra. I want to make that clear. He might have been, I don't remember exactly what Stormhost he was. It's not Cetra. It's a guy called Cetrus who is very like, oh, look, maybe it's Cetra. But it's a Black Library novel thing. And Games Workshop was even directly asked about this. And they said, no, it's not Cetra the Imperishable. It was Anvils of the Heldenhammer.
Here we go.
Yeah, it was one of those things where the Black Library author wanted it to be Cetra the Imperishable, but when GW was asked about it, they said absolutely not. Because you have to remember, the Black Library authors will just throw a lot of random shit into books that nothing ever happens with it, which happens a lot. Just like how in the Hamilcar book, there's a character that's alluded to be Ikit Claw from Warhammer Fantasy, but it's not actually Ikit Claw. Even though the author, as far as the author is concerned, it absolutely is Ikit Claw. But yeah. Let's see. Eternus, Bellacor's Stormcast offshoot guy. Yeah. You think Loris Grimm should have been revealed? I don't know if I agree with that. Friend or Trader, glory to Sigmar. The realms are awash with the malignant influence of chaos. The Knights Excelsior shall by the hammer purge this ruin, by which they mean burn down literally everything. And that is time. Oh, this one was close.
Let's have a look at this. Oh, it is close. Look at this. Whoa. So what do we have over on Twitch, Ryan?
Twitch was a tie between A and B, but also like, I'm going to be honest, Twitch barely anybody voted.
So Twitch, seriously, Go over to Twitch and do some votes over there, YouTube people, in the last one. And what did YouTube say?
YouTube had I think it was 38% S and 36% A.
Wow. There we go. So what we're going to say, these murderers of most all folks are just slightly into the S tier?
I think, yeah.
Cool. There we go. Wow. Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest of that. Morally, these guys are absolute bastards. But
yeah, they are.
They are one of my favorite Stormhosts because they have one of the best stories. Like they're like a uniquely great story. Like I know a lot of people see them and go, I know Andy already said this, but a lot of people see them and go, oh, well, they're just Space Marines. No, they're not. I don't think they're anything like. I misclicked as whatever. I think that they are one of the best. Like I think them and the Hallowed Knights next to each other are one of the best. Like this is what Stormcast Eternals are as a faction, and it makes them interesting. Before the Knights Excelsior got their big short story at the end of first edition, start of second edition, I hated Stormcast Eternals. Absolutely hated them. Wanted nothing to do with them. Thought they were garbage. Thought they had like a couple of okay characters, but overall hated them. Then I wrote that short story and I was like, never mind, I fuck with this. I fuck with this big time. Because I think it's like Andy said, it's Sigmar the Genocider. It's Sigmar the murderer of Norska. It's Sigmar the persecutor of magic users. It's Sigmar the Awful, which is a core concept of Sigmar.
I could not hard agree more. When I read these guys and I looked into them and I had a good wander around a couple of the books and dived into it, all I felt was, yeah, this is something that feels like it would be the natural evolution of parts of what Sigmar used to be. And it feels fitting. And it's horrendous and it's awful. And yeah, sure, you could look at it and say, well, this is sort of like 40k. No, it's not. Just because they've got 2 legs and 2 arms, that doesn't make them Space Marines, nor does it make them humans per se anymore. They're their own thing. And they've got stories that are natural evolutions of stuff from Warhammer. And yes, they might have similar outcomes to parts of 40k, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't be explored. I like these guys. I think they've got a lot of character, and I feel like it's much like the Hallowed chaps, the Hallowed Knights. There is something there for a story about those who have a crisis of faith, who don't believe that what they're doing is justified. And the fact that all of their brainwashing training is to try and push them to never reach that point is an interesting story. That's interesting, and it's something that can be dived into. And you can see that just with the relatively short amount of information that they present inside the, what do they call their army list again? I always forget. The battle tomes. Battle tomes?
Yes, battle tomes, yeah.
Battle tomes, thank you.
The thing that is worth noting about them is the last thing that I think ties in really well with what Andy said, is that keep in mind that they're not actually automatons. Like that's something they try to train themselves to be, but many of them are ultimately still human deep down, and they are relying on a lot of techniques to try and allow them to do what they think needs to be done. And that there are short stories that have Knights Excelsior in the various short story collections. There are some that have extreme deep conflicts about the shit that they're up to, which is fun. All right, that takes us to our last Stormhost for today.
Our last Stormhost for the day are the Tempest Lords. Please me. Please me? Please tell me. That's what I meant to say. Ryan, what are the Tempest Lords? Not until at least you're in the same room as me. Let's move on swiftly. Tempest Lords.
Yeah. So the Tempest Lords are kind of an interesting group. These are claimed to often be the most regal of the Stormcast Eternals, because rather amusingly, every single member of the Tempest Lords was a noble, a monarch, a king, a queen. They were royalty. Every single one of them. This is they are known to have like the best orators of the various Stormhosts when they go out proselytizing the name of Sigmar, because it's worth noting that a lot of people in the realms don't worship Sigmar or had to be convinced to worship Sigmar, and these guys were often unleashed to do that. Many of them, the vast majority of them, came from the realm of Hish, which is the realm of light, and they are portrayed very much as these noble, enlightened, courteous speakers that are good at convincing people to turn their backs on their old ways and their tribal beliefs and come into the great loving light of Sigmar. They're also incredibly arrogant in a lot of ways. They have like a whole gimmick where they believe that there's a quote where it's like Sigmar made a comment on them once where he said something like every one of them is worth 12 of the enemy. So they have a whole thing where they believe that they shouldn't die unless they kill at least 12 enemies. And if they do, they're like really fucking upset about it when they get reforged, like to the point where it like genuinely mentally fucks them up. And they like hate themselves. They have to go through this whole process of like trying to earn back favor. But they start off very much as like, oh wow, these guys are super good. You even have a whole note of that. They're another one of the polytheistic Stormhosts. They don't just worship Sigmar, but they also worship, here it comes, Mermid.
Mermid?
Yeah,
How
Mermid.
Is it midish or midia?
Yeah, she who rules, the armored high priestess, who was a goddess of strategy.
Strategy and war and being noble. I wonder who that is.
How strange. These guys are a rather interesting group initially, because from the Stormcast Eternals side, the Stormcast Eternal book, they are always talked about as that they're these great speakers who very much are seen as like the saviors of the common man, and they believe that it's their duty to go out and protect the little guy and all this other stuff. But there have been some short stories written about them that show them in a very, very different light, where it suggests very highly that that is how they see themselves. And while they are very much willing to go out and fight on the front line to protect these little squishy mortals, there have been stories about how like one of the guys that was zapped up to be a Tempest Lord thought of himself in life just as he does as a Stormcast, where he thought he was this great, noble, caring, passionate lord. And you find out over the course of this short story that there's a Tzeentchian sorcerer that's opposing him. And this sorceress goes, "You don't actually remember your life correctly, do you?" And he goes, "No, I remember everything. Like, I was a great man. The people loved me. They loved my family. They loved us ruling over them because we were kind and generous lords." And she goes, "No, that's what you think you remember." And what the story reveals, and this is a very canonical aspect of the Stormcast, is that when Stormcasts are reforged, they don't remember their lives fully. They remember what Sigmar wants them to remember. Their memories are quite literally pruned through the reforging process, and many things that they thought, anything that Sigmar does not want them to hold on to, they will not. And you get this whole dynamic of the short story of that the Tzeentchian sorceress that you're dealing with in the short story is not just any random person. She was a peasant that lived in this kingdom, and talks about how cruel and awful the ruling class was, and how they like didn't give a shit about the common man. And the reason she ends up falling to Tzeentch is because she was praying to literally anything that would listen to give her a better life, to change things, to help her escape this hell. And she ends up playing a role in the force that led Tzeentch into the city, which leads to its downfall.
Who's the bad guy there?
Yeah, and that's the big question the story offers you, of that you find out that the Stormcast, he realizes later in the story that him and the Zinchian sorceress have had this exact conversation like 5 times, but every time he dies, he loses the memories of them talking.
Mm-hmm.
And the question the story posits to you that it doesn't ever answer is, does Sigmar deliberately remove the conversation that they have? Or is it that he just happens to forget it through the reforging process? Because both are potentially possible.
Yeah. And that ambiguity makes the story much more fun.
Yeah. And that's not to say these guys are like secretly evil. A lot of them are genuinely very noble lords. There are times they have gone into conflict with other order factions because of how they treat like common folk, especially when you're dealing with like the Daughters of Cain or the Lumineth, essentially your elven factions. But they're an interesting group that on the surface they're incredibly bland. But when you start getting into their stories and you start getting into that whole like the concept of the noble ruler, which of course is like a very beloved fantasy trope, but one that has been very picked apart as society continues to advance, because you have stuff like Tolkien, where Tolkien really loves the concept of the noble, great, mighty ruler, and how if we just have a great king, it'll fix all of our problems, with like Aragorn. And then you have other people that look at that and go, hey, that's kind of a fucked up trope. That's kind of messy, dude. And these guys live at the heart of that.
Yeah, what we've got here is an entire faction of those who have been trained from birth to rule. And one would presume that if you go with the story as presented, Sigmar has chosen the most proud, the most noble, and the most capable to come back and lead the people in a way they could never do in life. Empowered by Sigmar to be 1,000 times better than they ever were. And as a story, that sounds beautiful, doesn't it? The reality is, however, that power corrupts, and absolute power, which many monarchs have, corrupts absolutely. So many of these great people are far less great than you might expect. And they are a stereotype that manifests in a very different way to how the stereotype would normally be pushed. Normally, it would be pushed exactly as its core description, and that is, these are the good guys. We have chosen the best of the good and the pure. They're courteous, they're polite, they're marvelous. But the reality is, look at that fucking picture. No, they're not. And there is a great deal more complexity here as well, which I think serves them well. Yes, some of them are exactly what they could be. But as we all know, leaders come in all stripes and all forms. Sometimes those who have got the best moral structure to begin with, when they're in power, prove to be too weak to use it, or alternatively, too corrupt, and they use too much of it. Power is really difficult to wield. And one of the greatest strengths of monarchies is that you'll be trained from birth to use it. But who's training you? And what are they training you? If you're trained well, then yes, you could be a brilliant king, a great philosopher king who can lead the people well. However, it's altogether not unlikely that you will be trained by the previous generations into being an absolute arse. So that is the core recruitment place for these people who are reforged again and again and again to think they're the best, when in reality, it's a bit more complex.
Mm. So I actually don't know whether to make these guys SABC.
Let's go SACD.
Okay.
SACD. Let's remove the B. Okay, no one's going B anyway, so cool. You're not going to get a chance to go B. Maybe we should, let's just remove the B. SACD.
SACD, you got it.
Yeah, they're an interesting group because they are so clearly meant to be this perfect example of leadership. And again, it's a natural reflection of what Sigmarism espoused, which was obey the elector counts. They are my representatives. Obey the emperor. He sits in my throne. Obey the nobles. It's very much a core part of what Sigmar is in Warhammer. Indeed, it's written hard-coded into their very tenets. The core of their faith is listen to your betters and with a stress on betters because they are my representatives. And this group is a perfect demonstration of that. But it comes with all of the strengths and weaknesses of that. After all, the nobility in Warhammer are notorious for falling far more than the common people to the depredations of chaos.
Living legend. What this stream is teaching me is that Stormcast are the prime example of hit or miss. They're never mid.
So is our poll up?
Yes, it is. So get your votes in. This is the last poll. This is the last poll of today. So please get your votes up. If anybody, this stream's been kind of chill as stuff. If anybody wants to do I don't know, throw like $25 to move a Stormcast chamber around, why not? Feel free to at the end here. Angel to Bry, Knights Excelsior, when Games Workshop imports Imperium logic in AoS.
See, I get what you're saying, Angel, but I honestly think that this is more Sigmar logic into Age of Sigmar, and I think it makes complete sense. Whilst, yes, there are things from the Imperium that look very similar, the rationale for it here is, I think, very firmly grounded in the background that was established in Warhammer, The World That Was.
Ricky Chapman, oh, they're cold as ice. They're willing to sacrifice our life. Gets hit by Stormcast armor.
Cold as ice! No. You're willing to sacrifice our love! So that was really out of tune, but hey, it's late.
Thank God Andy's here. I would never get a single song reference ever.
Where's cold as ice? I am indeed. That's what I do. I'm the old one. I'm meant to understand none of them, though. It's a pretty old song, though.
Any plans for Warhammerify other monster stream? I think at some point we'll come back around to that. I would say
a lot of work, which is why we try to avoid it.
Yeah,
I'll be honest. It's a lot of work, and whilst we really enjoyed it, it takes a lot for us to do. So we tend to, stick to the core of what we do best, which is discuss the lore that's out there.
Coleman rules. After watching the David Geimer interview, over here on Lorebeards, man, that was a while ago. I got the Gromberdo, The Legend of the White Dwarf book. It's been a good read. Yeah, I really like David Geimer's work. He's great. He does good stuff.
Yeah, David Geimer's great.
Scion of the Emperor. Morning. Hope you recovered well from last night's end of the Dothon. I am in some ways and not in others.
I'm mostly looking forward to watching him shave his head and also seeing him in person again, because that's always a good time.
Yes, that is very, very exciting. Scion, I know power corrupts is a popular refrain, but I'm more of the belief that power in the abstract does not corrupt. It reveals the truth of a person's heart. If you truly wish to know someone's character, give them power.
So I think there's a lot to say to that. However, the reality is that altogether too many people, when they're given power and they have fought hard to speak to the good of the world, when they get it and they find that power is not necessarily as easy to wield as they thought, they start trying to gather more power so they can actually finally do what they want. And by the time they get enough of it, they become the monsters that they previously hated, and they get kicked out, particularly the way democracy works. There is, I'd say, more complexity than that alone, because power does corrupt, but it also, because it gives you the ability to do what you wish, arguably, gives you an opportunity to both either shine or not. I can think of thousands of examples with current politics around the world, which I'm not going to go into. I'll just simply say that people could do better. Yep.
And that is it. Time on poll.
Cool?
And overwhelmingly on YouTube. Holy shit, over 50% on A. And Twitch also, majority went A.
Well, A, there we go. So on A, we've got the Hammers of Sigmar, our basic template. We've got the Vindicators, the Templars, the Astral Templars, pardon me, RAR, and our Tempest Lords. Where do you think they should go? Celestial Vindicators, Astral Templars. Oh, it's a toughie.
Definitely above Templars.
I agree. So you're going to get no dispute from me there.
I think I like them below the Hammers of Sigmar. I don't know how I feel about them against the Vindicators.
Yeah, it's a toughie, isn't it? From my side, I really like the story opportunities they potentially offer. I think they are strongly Sigmar. strongly Sigmar. So thus it feels like they should be a bit ahead. But I don't necessarily like them.
Yeah, I think for being the Sigmar faction, for being that they are carrying the divine, like they literally have a piece of Sigmar in them. I think they are a better expression of Sigmarism and what Stormcast Eternals are supposed to be than the Celestial Vindicators.
Yep, I agree. So where would you put them if you were ranking them?
I think
so. Ignoring this setup,
I think I would have slotted them in B. Personally,
I think they're a very strong B, and I would have probably done that too. I would have been tempted to do exactly what the chat did and put them in A. Purely because they are just so strongly Sigmar, so strongly.
Yeah, I would have them
so
like
strongly
a minus
to them.
Plus.
Yeah, exactly. I think theirs about perfect. I'd be happy with them in B. I'm not dissatisfied with them in A. I think they're a pretty damn good place.
Yeah, I think overall, I agree with the placements. I think chat was definitely very generous towards the Stormcast. Like, I know, looking at this, I think I would have put Tempest Lords and Celestial Vindicators in B. I would have put Astral Templars in D. Celestial Warbringers could stay in C. And then I would have kept Hammers in A. And I probably would have moved my personal taste. I'd keep Anvils in S. But realistically, I would have moved them down to B or A.
I mean, you're not wrong, Tibble. We did ban a B.
That's true. The one time we probably shouldn't have, we did. But yeah,
we did.
You know, it happens. Listen, it's not our fault that YouTube is a dick and only lets you have 4 choices for polls. All right.
So we have our poll. Our poll has the Hallowed Knights in at number 1 and the Celestial Warbringers right at the bottom. Now, if you disagree and think we've ballsed it up, dive into our Discord where you can go and find this entire setup yourself and go make your own list. It's already posted. It's down there inside Lorebeards Discord. So go pop in there. You'll find it inside the forum chat under Age of Sigmar. It's all there. And if you want to discuss your favorites and why they're your favorites, go drop it in there. And if you're watching this on YouTube and want to drop in comments, please do, because we love the algorithm loving us.
Yeah, and
subscribe.
Please feel free that if you go into the forum, we have open on this now for the Discord. Feel free to go in there and you can add your own Stormhost to it as well. And I would love to actually see y'all's lists.
Yeah, and particularly if you've got, I'd love to see how you'd list them out. And also, if you happen to have any miniatures painted, drop them in there as well, just to, because I'll look at them.
Yeah,
because that'd be awesome.
That is our time, and we actually came out pretty much exactly on time today.
That was amazing. Well done, Ryan. I'd like to say, in particular, a big thanks to Ryan, because he did the lion's share of the talking in this one, because obviously I'm a bit of a noob when it comes to Age of Sigmar, and by the time I'd finished reading them all, I'd already forgotten the first one, and I had to go back to it again and again, bouncing backwards and forwards, and I would just mangle it all. So thank you so much, Ryan. You're an absolute god.
Yeah, I will say, what? Oh, Ancient Dubai, thank you so much. I don't know if it's enough to move them to S, but I don't care. Hammers of Sigmar, S to me. My favorite army in Age of Sigmar, the Golden Boys who bring hope to the realms, glory to the first. All right, yeah, sure. Kick them up straight to the top. They
are now in, and that is enough to move them, because that has made me smile. And you know what? A part of me agrees.
I said 25.
You know what? A part of me agrees in that they are, in many ways, what the Stormcast are. And they tell the core story of the Stormcast, and it's a good one. I didn't expect this when I came back to it this time round, because I didn't like the Stormcast when I saw them first round. They were just Sigmarines to me. And as I read up about them in the first edition, I was like, why? This is shit. This is not well composed. However, throughout the editions, they've all been nicely expanded, and some of them much more than others. The Hammers of Sigmar in particular are the ones where we really get to dive into what it means to be one of the Stormcast Eternal, and it turns out it's complicated and it's a bit shit. It's grim. It's grim. And that isn't the story I was expecting from the superheroes that I was presented in first edition. They really showed that this was Warhammer. And by the time we get the later editions, it's really Warhammer. And I like the Hammers of Sigmar for that, because they're the group that allows us to examine that story. The others around them are often telling different stories that involve the core of what it is to be Stormcast Eternal, but it isn't really the story they're telling. They're often telling stories about their own individual problems, where the core story of what it is to be a Stormcast is told by the Hammers of Sigmar. And I like them for that. I think that they are a core faction for understanding them.
Yeah, one of the characters that is like in my top 5 of AoS characters that I would really love to do a Lorebeards episode on is Vandis Hammerhand. Because he has such a gut-wrenchingly tragic story. Even though it started off with him just being like the best golden boy in the world. He was so cool and awesome. I will never forget reading into 3rd edition and just being like, oh my god, what are they doing to Vandis? And it just gets worse and worse and worse.
I'm just going to bring this up because if you buy any Rookery products, you'll find my address.
Yeah.
So go buy yourself a copy of Dark Deeds, because I'm pretty sure it's in there.
If you want to go throw yourself on the ground in front of Andy's house and cry about one of our tier list streams, it's not that hard.
It really isn't. I'm altogether too easy to find. So thank you everyone for turning up. If you enjoyed the video, please do like and subscribe on whichever platform you're on, and do please dive into our Discord. Leave some comments there and give us something to read, because I love reading through all of your thoughts about our various streams. And indeed, on that one, Farseer, if you think that this is bullshit, then please explain why, and you might change my mind, particularly when it comes to things like Age of Sigmar, where I've yet to really form deep opinions. I'm still dabbling my way through the setting and learning more as I go.
Yep. I'm going to be sending you all on a lovely raid over to Vera, who hopefully everyone remembers that's going to be a part of it. We're going to be streaming with tomorrow morning to talk about Anathrema, the goddess of the savage hunt, which is going to be fun.
Oh, she's just appeared in Lawhammer.
Good shit. Perfect timing. So we'll see you guys then. Tell Vera we said hi. We love her, and we're excited to see her tomorrow. And we'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.
See you later.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.